We take thoughts captive, we pull lies down. Apologetic arena, lions wear the crown. Bold as lions stand and fight, truth shines bright in the night. Arguments fall when the word comes through. Arena live, we coming for you.
Not carnal weapons, strong in Christ. Truth cuts deep, yeah, truth precise. Every high thing coming down. Watch those arguments hit the ground. First century at lions roar. Christians bled on the arena floor. Now roles reversed, hear that sound. We the lions all around. What's the context? Say it loud. Truth stands tall, we ain't bowed. When the word speaks, error fades. Light shining in every debate.
We take thoughts captive,
we pull lies down. Apologetic arena, lions wear the crown. Bold as lions stand and fight. Truth shines bright in the night. Arguments fall when the word comes through. Arena live, we coming for you. Ecosmios runs the show. Zara Grace keeps order though. Moderators hold the line, keeping everything aligned. Hebrew Israelites, atheists too. Rabbis talking old school views, fibbing Farouk in every claim. Step in the arena, leave maimed. Don't look down, you bleeding on the floor. Game over, hear that lion roar. Hey, hey, don't look down, you bleeding on the floor. Hey, hey, game over, hear that lion roar.
beat you lightly with a Miss Wax stick. Every argument falls real quick. Spiritually neuralized, can't see clear. Truth right there, but they disappear. That might be clip of the month, we say. Another debate gone sideways today.
What's the context? What's the context? Who's the smallest lions? We are. We take thoughts captive, we pull lies down. Apologetic arena, lions wear the crown. Truth and love, but sharp and clear. Every argument disappears. Christ exalted, voices rise. Arena live, lions arise.
God bless, God bless, God bless. Guys, welcome back into the Apologetic Arena. Welcome back to the next and latest edition to the live streams. I'm your host, Israel. You can also call me King Context. And today we're going to be showing you again how to defend your faith as a Christian. We deal with Orthodox Judaism, like we're going to do today. Rabbis like Tovia Singer and people like him. Islam, atheism, and Hebrew Israelites. So if it's your first time here, welcome. We're going to have a good show. We are going to... Well, it depends actually what happens, to be honest, right? This is the joy of live streams. They always go a very unique, very special way. And today will be no different. Thank you for those who are here already, tuning in, the moderators. Thank you, everyone else. I hope you're doing well. I hope your week has started very well. And today this live stream will be an additional blessing to you. We're going to get started in a moment. Firstly, thank you all for tuning in. Welcome to tonight's stream. Skylar, hope you're doing well. God bless. And everybody else. First things first, if you are an Orthodox Jew, Rabbi Tovia Singer, first and foremost, you are welcome to click the link that's pinned in the chat and you can call in and we can have a conversation about why you don't accept Jesus as the Messiah. That's going to be the topic again today. We've done this topic a couple of times, had some eventful conversations, had some interesting reactions to some of the videos, and any Orthodox Jew who wants to call in can click the pinned link in the chat and we can have a conversation. All right. Guys, don't forget to like it. Don't forget to subscribe. If you like what we're obviously doing here, obviously we do these streams Mondays and Wednesdays by the grace of God, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UK. And what I'm going to say, and we obviously post daily clips, right, from the Apologetic Arena live, right? So you don't miss a beat. All right. So that's I think that's most of the house cleaning done. Yeah. So it's funny because, like I said, we've been talking about this topic for a while, right? We've done a couple of live streams on it recently. And what's actually interesting is a couple of days ago, I saw that Rabbi Tovia Singer had a conversation about why he rejects Jesus as the Messiah. And the funniest thing about it was a conversation with a Christian. So why this is interesting, we're going to watch some of that today, and we'll hear some of the arguments from Rabbi Tovia Singer. I haven't watched it yet, so it'll be interesting to see what he has to say. But if you think back to the last live stream we did, or the last couple of live streams we did about Orthodox Judaism and why rabbis like Tovia Singer are so aggressive, why they do not like Christians, Christian apologists, etc. They say things like we corrupt the Bible, we are being deceptive with the Bible. The whole concept of a Messiah who comes to die for the people, who comes to suffer for the people, is foreign. He takes this sort of approach. And what I was thinking earlier on today was, it's so interesting that Rabbi Tovia Singer and people like him will be so harsh, so aggressive with Christian apologists. And they will say that people like me are disrespectful, are rude, and whatever else they may say. And that is the reason why they will not have conversations with us. And that's the defense they have as to why they have conversations with other people, right? Case in point, like this Christian that we're going to see in today's video. And what I was thinking about earlier on is, Tovia Singer, Rabbi Tovia Singer will be so harsh with us as Christians. But when Christians are harsh back, rightly so, in my opinion as well, he will say, yeah, this is why I can't speak to these sorts of people. But then he'll have conversations with other people. But like I said, I haven't watched this video, so let me not judge what happens in this conversation. I don't know who this Christian is, so hopefully it goes well. But we'll obviously see. And obviously, as always, we'll be able to jump in and discuss the reasoning that Rabbi Tovia Singer is giving us to why he rejects Jesus as the Messiah. Now, what's also interesting is the last live stream I did about Tovia Singer, it was the last two really. We looked at multiple different videos, right? We looked at a video from Tovia Singer 10 years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago, and then about 4 or 5 weeks ago. And what's interesting is we could see that his arguments as to why he would say that Christians should reject Jesus as the Messiah, why Orthodox Jews, why everybody should reject Jesus as the Messiah, hasn't really changed, okay? So now we're looking at a live stream or a video from Tovia Singer, which was from 3-4 days ago. So we're really close. And what do you think is going to happen? I haven't watched it but I'm pretty sure it's going to be more of the same from what we saw from 10 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, and especially 4 or 5 weeks ago. And I mentioned previously, right, one thing which has changed about Rabbi Tovia Singer over the years is he has done a better job at telling emotional, heart-pulling stories which are very powerful. Don't get it twisted. Telling those sorts of stories are very powerful and are very persuasive to people. He's got a lot better at doing that sort of stuff instead of actually dealing with the arguments that Christians make, which is obviously interesting, because regardless of any emotional story, we know that as Christians, the truth always prevails. Okay? So, just like Ecosmia said, let's all make sure that we click the like button to push the stream out further, because it definitely goes a long way. And the last thing I'll say before we jump into anything is, it's you know, it's so funny. Like, I don't always get time to read all of the comments that come on this channel, but it's so funny to me certain times when you see comments across the board, right? Like I said, Orthodox Judaism, Islam, atheism, Hebrew Israelites, right? The comments on all of the different topics are fascinating. And in recent days, like some of the comments from Orthodox Jews that have come into the channel have just been so fascinating, so funny. Why? Because so many of them never deal with the arguments. They could watch a 20-minute, 30-minute, 40-minute, 5-minute clip of us engaging from a Christian perspective as why we say Jesus is the Messiah from the scripture, and even from their own sources. Not that their sources say that Jesus is the Messiah. Quite the contrary, actually. When you look at a lot of Jewish sources, like the Talmud, they are speaking very negatively about Jesus. But we'll save that for another day. My point is, the whole concept, the Christian concept that we look at as the Messiah that's coming to atone, that's coming to die, those are in the Orthodox Jewish literature. I've shown you that before. Most likely I'm going to show you that again today. And in the future, we'll see more of that as well, right? As we continue to have these conversations. Okay? All right. So that's pretty much all of it. All right. Let me just do one more thing, actually, right? All right. Cool. And obviously, I know you guys can obviously hear me well, and you can see me, all of that good stuff. Thank God for the technology that we have that allows us to do this sort of stuff. All right. We're going to jump into this video, but bear in mind, guys, any Orthodox Jew, like I said, is more than welcome to click the link. Last time we had what might even be clip of the month, right, from an Orthodox Jew. There's only a couple more days to get a clip of the month for March. So right now, the Orthodox Jew we spoke to last time has first place. And if we don't get something better, then March's clip of the month is going to be the Orthodox Jew who said that God would be an adulterer if he, if the virgin birth is true. All right, but let's see. All right, guys. All right. So, yeah. So this video, which I mentioned previously, this is Jesus the Messiah? A Christian apparently presses Rabbi Tovia Singer. A Christian presses Rabbi Tovia Singer. And this is from a couple of days ago. Now, like I said, I don't know who this Christian is. I don't know what she's going to say. I don't know how they connected or anything along those lines. It'll be interesting to see what actually unfolds as we'll jump into it in a moment. But how I would love for Rabbi Tovia Singer to be pressed by some Christians that more people are familiar with, especially when it comes to these sorts of debates. And this isn't to like throw any shade on this Christian. Like I said, I don't know who she is, right? But I was saying this before, right? Like in previous streams. One of the things which is really interesting about this sort of topic is the kind of person that you would really want to press Rabbi Tovia Singer is someone who is familiar with the Bible, specifically, well, the Bible, right? Old Testament and New Testament, but specifically the Old Testament because the rabbi doesn't accept the New Testament as divine scripture. So a Christian who is familiar with the Old Testament is familiar with ancient Jewish sources like the Talmud, and someone who is up for like a back and forth conversation. These three things that I think are essential for the kind of person who should be able to press Rabbi Tovia Singer. Because that sort of person who has those three capabilities, and the better all three of these are, the better the conversation will be. They'll be able to hold someone like Rabbi Tovia Singer to task. When he makes certain arguments, when he says certain things, if you don't know what his own ancient traditions teach, it's going to be harder to keep him honest. Because he could say anything, as we've seen him say so many different times in the past. And he's saying things which contradict ancient rabbinic Judaism, which he says he follows. So it should be interesting. Okay, so like I said, I don't know who this woman is. I pray by the grace of God she did well. And even if she didn't, this is the joy of being in the truth. Even if she didn't, she gives many Christians the opportunity to engage with a conversation like this, because Rabbi Tovia Singer, especially these days, isn't going to do this sort of stuff for the most part, right? It would be very surprising if he does something like this with someone the Christians would actually be very excited to have for them to have a conversation with Tovia Singer. All right, let's jump into this. Let's see what is going to happen. What is the reason why Tovia Singer says he rejects the Messiah in this recent conversation, which was published on his channel a couple of days ago? And again, any Orthodox Jew who wants to call in is welcome to do so as well. All right, let's jump into it.
In our tradition, Jesus never claimed to be the Messiah.
Give me a thumbs up as well, guys, just to make sure you can hear it.
In our tradition, Jesus never claimed to be the Messiah, but that was a claim made for him. But regardless, many people have claimed to be the Messiah. What they all have in common is they have accomplished none of these things that are in the scripture. That's why what we're waiting for, and that's why Judaism doesn't accept the Christian Messiah.
Okay, and as you know, we as Christians we know those passages of the Bible, but the Christian theology says that those verses are referred to the second coming of Jesus. How do you respond to this? Now, let me ask something else. As you know, one of the chapters of the Tanakh that is most dear to Christians is Isaiah 53. Over the years, I often heard it said that this chapter is the only one of the book of Isaiah that is not read in synagogues. Is it true?
No.
Never.
No. So let me explain this, because your audience, I think, will be lost on this completely. 95% of the prophets are not read in the synagogue. So now, God help Christians. I don't know how they possibly navigate their way through this.
All right, talk about an intro. 90 seconds. Okay, and so far we've got a bit of a snippet of what's going to come. The Christian claim that we make that Jesus can fulfill the rest of the messianic prophecies on his second coming. And also she mentioned Isaiah 53, which should be interesting. Okay, so I guess everyone is saying they can hear the video. That's obviously good. And let's see, chat. Feel free again to click in and have a conversation. And Bob, if you believe that Jesus isn't the Messiah, you can also click, call in, and we can have a conversation that way as well. Not really interested in having like a debate or a conversation from voice to message. So yeah. Okay, cool. All right, so far, Rabbi Tovia Singer hasn't really said anything which is surprising. They obviously spoke about something which I've heard several times over the years. You may have heard this before about, she mentioned, which is good anyway, that there's this claim that goes around that according to Orthodox Judaism, they don't read Isaiah 53 in the synagogues. And you hear people say things like, well, the reason they don't do that is because it points to Jesus. It's like Christians, it's one of Christians' go-to passages about Jesus being the Messiah. And there's this whole debate back and forth about whether the Orthodox Jews don't read it because of that or because of something else. Now, obviously, Tovia Singer alluded to something else, which I'm not going to say it's true or not, right? But two things can be right at the same time. I'll just put it like that. Two things can be right at the same time. The Orthodox Jews could say, well, yeah, we don't read most of the Bible in our weekly Torah reading. And that could be true. And also the same thing could be true that they specifically make sure they don't read the passage of Isaiah 53, etc. So it doesn't have to be either or. But yeah, let's see what happens. Let's see. Let's continue.
We are live. First of all, I would like to welcome everyone who follows the page, the Book of Books, Il Libro dei Libri. Welcome to this special episode, which will be a little different from all the previous ones. Today, I have the privilege of interviewing a very special guest, someone who is well known not only in Jewish and academic circles, but also in the Christian world. Rabbi Tovia Singer is the founder and director of Apologetic Judaism, an organization dedicated to spreading knowledge of Judaism in its authentic essence, also among Christians. He is the author of books such as, I show you, Let's Get Biblical, and he is also extremely active on social media with truly impressive numbers. His YouTube channel has more than 100,000 subscribers and has reached nearly 15 million views in just a few years. Today, he's joining us live from Jerusalem, where he lives, and he will be answering some questions. So, it is my great pleasure to welcome Rabbi Tovia Singer. Shalom.
Shalom. Thank you for having me on.
It's the first time you are interviewed by an Italian media?
Okay.
Yes?
I don't know. I'm interviewed almost daily, so
Maybe.
maybe, who knows?
It could be.
Could be.
Perfect. So, first question for you. Today, I would like to ask you about Judaism and about how Judaism views some of the most important aspects of Christianity. In our time, many Christians, thank God, are rediscovering the Jewish roots of their faith and also the Jewish identity of Jesus. Something that is often taken for granted, but it's very important. So, I would like to begin with the first question. From the Jewish biblical perspective, who is the Messiah supposed to be? What are the characteristics that the Messiah of Israel must have, and why not Jesus?
All right, so I think this is a good first question to start with, right? What does the Bible teach us, the Hebrew Bible specifically, since he's an Orthodox Jew and doesn't accept the New Testament? What does the Hebrew Bible teach us about the Messiah? Now, I've mentioned this previously when engaging with someone like Rabbi Tovia Singer. There was one time when he made an argument and he mentioned a couple of different things, and I was like, well, he framed the question, what he was saying, in a particular way. What does it say that Messiah is going to do in the end times? And I was making the point that you could ask that question, but that question leaves so much on the table. The better question, the more all-encompassing question would be, what does the Hebrew Bible, like she asks, say about the Messiah? Because this now opens up everything from Genesis to Malachi for you to start to break down what the Bible actually says about the Messiah. Not just about what it says about the Messiah in the end times. What does the Hebrew Bible say about the Messiah? So let's see what he says in response. This is a very good question to start with, at least to just lay the foundation to see where he's going to go with this. Is he going to do what he's done in the past and just focus on specific things about the end times and ignore other passages about the Messiah? Or is he going to say, yeah, you know, well, the Old Testament says loads of different things about the Messiah. Let's see.
Oh, so that's easy. So the sources for the Messiah in the Hebrew Bible are very, very well known. Isaiah 11, as an example, tells us about the Messiah. He's a descendant of Jesse, and the kind of things that he will do. He will judge among the nations. There'll be a world peace. Did you know what's going on right now in Iran, in Lebanon, in Gaza, in Ukraine, in Russia, in Nigeria, and the Sudan? I can keep going, but there are about 30 wars that are raging in the world today. Those wars will come to an end. Nation will not lift up sword against nation, neither will they learn of war anymore. Isaiah 11 and Isaiah 2, respectively. Right now, at the moment, about half of all the Jews in the world live in Israel, where I live. When the Messiah comes, all the Jewish people will be gathered in to the land of Israel. As an example, Isaiah 43, verse 4, 5, and 6. Ezekiel 37 is very famous for the two rods that Ezekiel holds in his hands, which means the restoration of the 10 lost tribes. Many of them have been found. Ethiopian Jews from the tribe of Dan, the Jews from Manasseh, and so on. So it actually is all happening right now. There'll be a universal knowledge of God. So in the Messianic age, this is the most important feature of the Messianic age, and you'll notice that all the passages I'm quoting are Messianic, and every Christian viewer will recognize these. These are all directly from a Bible that Christians around the world cherish as sacred and the Word of God. The knowledge of God will cover the world as the water covers the sea. So as an example, there are people watching this show right now who are Christian, Jewish, Muslim, and many of them have no religion at all. When the true Messiah comes, all the nations will speak in a pure speech and worship the same God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So if we live in a world where there's more than one religion, the Messiah has not yet come. If we live in a world where there's war, the Messiah has not yet come. The building of a temple in Jerusalem.
All right, so you're going to go into your second argument, right? But just notice notice what's happening so far already, right? She asked him a question, which I said is a good question, she asked it in a very specific way as well, which again opens up everything. What does the Bible say about the Messiah, Hebrew Bible? And he said, well, Christians believe, or every Christian will accept what he's saying. The majority of Christians would accept. Yes, Isaiah 11 is about the Messiah. The other passages he mentioned, which are about the Messiah, Ezekiel 37, a lot of Christians will accept Ezekiel 37 anyway. But the point is, notice how he focused on specific things and not everything, or even more things. So the point I'm trying to make is, obviously I don't know what he's going to say next. He obviously won't talk about he's going to talk about the building of the temple, but I'm pretty sure he's not going to mention other stuff in the Hebrew Bible which speak about the Messiah. Isaiah 53, famous passage which we saw at the beginning of the interview in the snippet. Why didn't he mention that? Is he going to mention that in this section? Most likely not. Why? Because it doesn't help the argument he's making. We'll continue with this though anyway. We apparently have Eric, who's a Jew. So let's see what... Hello?
Yo, what's up?
How you doing? You said you're Jewish?
Yeah, I'm a Jew. I am Orthodox, and I do attend the Chabad Lubavitch sect of things. So I do have a good decent amount of knowledge on Torah, on Mishnah, on Gemara.
Okay.
But to answer your question on the topic,
Hold on. Hold on. So you believe the Rebbe is the Messiah?
I mean, to some great extent, I mean that's the view, that the Zohar, the Zohar does, point out, to the fact that our Grand Rebbe is the Messiah.
The Zohar?
He is the Mashiach.
Okay.
Yeah, do you know what the Zohar is?
I do know what the Zohar is, but like where, on a scale of like building blocks, where do you put the Zohar? You put the Zohar above the Hebrew Bible, or you put it above the Talmud?
Well, look, I don't want to sound like being a smartass, but the way we practice things, right?
Mm-hmm.
The way in Rabbinic Judaism, we view that all of the scriptures that we have, we all call them Torah equally, right? Because
Okay.
Torah in Hebrew means to learn,
Yep.
right? To guide.
Okay.
But I can tell you that the Gemara, which does exist within the Talmud, is the highest form of scriptural authority that we have, and that's said by Menachem Mendel Schneerson himself.
Okay, so the Gemara, parts of the Talmud, then what would come next to you? You did say you see it all as, I guess, the same, but obviously you did say at the same time that the Gemara is the highest. So in this tier system, you believe it's all like God's word or God's Torah, but you said that the Gemara, the Talmud is number one. So what's number two? And then what's number three out of the Hebrew Bible and then the Zohar?
Well, yeah, if we do have to rate it on like a genuine scale of what we have to rely on, I mean, we get our mitzvot, we get our 613 commandments from the Torah, or as we call it, the Tanakh. So that would leave it on second spot. But first is the Gemara, second would be Torah, obviously because of all the mitzvot that we have to abide by. Third, we do have the Mishnah, which is the old. I would say this is like, look, the way we have our Talmud, we have Mishnah and Gemara. Mishnah is basically old law, right? And the Gemara is a new refined law based off the old law.
Okay.
So the Mishnah will be at last. And the Zohar is its own thing. We don't exactly put the Zohar in those categories because it's basically its own special thing, right? It basically takes, from Tanakh, it takes from Mishnah, it takes from Gemara, and it just, compiles all of them up.
Yeah, I knew that. That's why I was asking you, because it was interesting to me that you said, based on the Zohar, you believe the Rebbe is the Messiah. But if based on your tiering system, it's at the bottom.
Well, look, I told you the way I tiered it. We started with Gemara at first because it's the new redefined law, and last thing we have is the Mishnah. And I told you that we put the Zohar in its own special place because in the Zohar we don't believe that the Mashiach or the Messiah is this, specific individual. Every single generation we get a Mashiach, for instance, right? And you might think that this is like some practice that only the Chabad Jews attain to, that's actually a practice that Jews worldwide believe in, unironically.
No, I
right?
know, I
And
know.
you probably
There's
have no.
no, I know. There's some. I've read some of the Jewish literature that talks about a apparent Messiah coming in every age, but so
Wonderful, yeah, wonderful.
okay. So today, obviously, I'm looking and happy to have conversations with Orthodox Jews. I want to know why you don't accept Jesus as your Messiah. Give me some reasons why you don't accept Jesus as the Messiah, and you believe the Rebbe is the Messiah.
Well, I'm gonna go by the standard of what you might classify a Messiah, and I'm gonna try to reconcile that with you. The reason we Jews don't believe in him, and we have not believed in JC for the last 2,000 years, is that he just does not fit the subscription. He does not fill the description of a Mashiach. He doesn't fit the description of somebody who would, liberate Israel, topple down, the Romans, free us from Carthage. And, what we basically got, in the book of Daniel, Jeremiah, you probably are going to point out, to Isaiah 53 and 11. Most Christians, do that when they want to clarify that JC is the Messiah. But he just does not fit the bill. He didn't, fit the description. And he basically abolished, the chosen title that we inherited, from Abraham.
Okay, so two things I want to say. Two things, right? So, firstly,
yeah,
you said Jesus doesn't fit the criteria. Okay. The first thing I want to ask you about, that is, how does Jesus not fit the criteria in a way in which the Rebbe does fit the criteria?
Right. Look, I'm only gonna paraphrase a little bit.
Okay.
I don't know much about your New Testament. I've read, parts here and there.
Yeah, don't worry about the New
JC
Testament.
Was,
if you don't know about the New Testament, don't feel like you need to mention it if you don't want to.
Well, yeah, look, you have to understand our perspective too is that we take the traditions of the elders as, JC called it, or the Talmud as the authority.
Okay.
Right? So we don't necessarily take Isaiah, Daniel, Jeremiah as the only inhibitors to what a Mashiach is. We have to look exactly at what the rabbis lined out to be Mashiach is.
Okay, so tell me
what the rabbis wrote down.
So tell me. That's what my question. Tell me how Jesus doesn't fulfill the criteria, but the Rebbe does, according to the rabbis.
Right, yeah. So look, the Mashiach, when we go by the standard of the Old Testament, as you guys call it, he was supposed to liberate Israel. He was supposed to be a savior, right? He was supposed to, unite all of us, from all of the corners of the earth, right?
Liberate the people,
so
save the people, bring peace, you said.
Yeah.
Okay. How did the Rebbe do that?
Well, look, yet again, I said I'm only going by your standard of things. The Rebbe is not the Mashiach that Isaiah prophesied about. He was a Mashiach of his generation.
Okay.
Right? He was a Mashiach of the 20th century,
Okay.
Right? The Grand Mashiach, or basically the Grand Rebbe Mashiach.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The one that we have been waiting for 2,000 years. The individual, who is, I would say, look, we don't believe that the Mashiach will be God, but we believe that he be on par to some extent. Right? We have not seen that yet. We are waiting for him to bring us all from all four corners of the earth, that we may inherit our land rightfully, right from the Euphrates to the river, from Egypt, to Iraq, or as you called Babylon. I'm only going by our rabbinic standard, right? Okay. Which is the superior standard. I'm not going by the Old Testament.
Okay.
Right.
So second question I wanted to ask you. Hold on. So second thing I wanted to ask you. So my first question was, what separates the Rebbe from Jesus? You said the Rebbe is the Messiah of the generation, the last generation. He's not the Grand Messiah. Is that the Grand Messiah? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay. The second.
Yes, we have a term for it in Hebrew. The
second thing I wanted to mention now is, you said that Christians like to go to Isaiah 53, verse 11 for it is the example you gave, in order to say this is the Messiah, right?
Right.
Okay, and my question to you is, what's wrong with that if rabbis in the Talmud did the same thing and said this passage is about the Messiah?
Well, a mere passage wouldn't declare what just the Mashiach is, right? We have parts within the Mishnah.
I didn't say it's just about one passage. I'm just saying, you said Christians go to this passage. So I'm not asking you, rabbis go to the same passage who aren't Christian. So how is it a problem for Christians to do it? And they're talking about the Grand Messiah as well, by the way. How is it a problem for us to do it as Christians if the rabbis that you follow do the same thing?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's really a problem. I mean, you know, from what I understand in the New Testament, you know, I mean, he was put on the cross and he fulfilled something out of Psalms, I think, right? But yet again, you know, it's just, you know, the way we interpreted things. But I don't think it's necessarily wrong for you to go to the Old Testament and, you know, try to dig out if you know, JC was genuinely the Mashiach.
Mm.
Right? But the standard is he was not the Mashiach of his time. The way we view it is he was, look, don't take offense to it. He was a blasphemer.
I'm not taking offense. I'm not taking offense. Don't worry. Say what's on
he
your heart.
went out of the law.
Okay. How did he go out of the law? How did he go out of the law?
Well, I mean, he was claiming to be God. I mean, obviously, you know, claiming, you know, a divine title, you know, to be the Bari Lochai, you know, the Son of God. You're basically putting yourself on the same standard as Hashem.
Didn't you mention
right?
before that the Messiah, the Grand Messiah, is going to be, you said it where you like, he's going to be close to God, but you were careful with your words. So what's wrong with if Jesus is doing that, if that's what the Hebrew Bible says?
Yeah, I mean, but he was just a mere man. He was not, you know, a figure, you know, that was, you know, waging war against, you know, Israel's enemies, right? He wasn't, you know, this figure that was, you know, solely focused on his apparent mission of, you know, Jewish salvation.
Okay.
Right? He didn't do any of these things. He basically went out of his way after apparently, look, I am going to be truthful about this. You know, some people, you know, say, oh no, it's the Pharisees. Some say it's the Sadducees. No, I mean, we did it, right? I mean, we did it, right? You know, we put him on there, you know, on the cross. You know, but we did it for a reason, and it was a justified reason, right? It was his blasphemy that led him there.
What was his blasphemy?
Was a troublemaking
we're going to go in a circle now because you said it's blasphemy, and I asked you last time, how did he blaspheme? You said he claimed to be God. Then I said to you, okay, cool. Well,
right.
If the Old Testament is saying that the Messiah is going to be divine, and we have rabbinic sources which like link up with that, how is he blaspheming? How is he not doing what the Messiah is supposed to be doing?
May you go by that again, sorry?
So there's passages in the Hebrew Bible which talk about the Messiah being divine. There's rabbinic literature in the Talmud which also say the same thing. So again, like I asked you with Isaiah 53, when the rabbis go to that particular passage, it's not a problem for you, but you say it's a problem for Christians doing it. Well, I guess you kind of backed off that anyway. So I'm just saying, if the Messiah, if there's one line of thought which says the Messiah is going to be divine, not just a mere man, and the rabbis agree, why is it a problem if Jesus is claiming to be God?
Well, it is a problem because if he was God, he would have saved himself off the cross, right? Claiming to be God means that you would have, you know, all the essence and properties of God.
Okay.
Right? And the way he made it seem is that he had the Spirit of God within him as if he is God himself.
Okay.
That's blasphemy of the utter extent. He was claiming divinity and he was claiming equality with, you know, Elohim in heaven, right? And yet we put him on the cross. If he was God, he would have saved himself.
Why? Why would he have saved himself?
I mean, it's just basic logic.
Why would he have saved himself? So when the rabbis, for example, right, like we've spoken about already, say Isaiah 53 is about the Messiah, does Isaiah 53 say that he saves himself?
Isaiah 53 says that the suffering servant saved himself.
Does it say that in Isaiah 53, or does it say that he's going to be bruised and he's going to die? Unalive, be unalived.
Right, but the way we look at it, I told you, the way we see it is that, look, you're not going to find a single rabbi from any century interpreting Isaiah in all of its forms that the person who is suffering on the cross or being hung is indeed a man. This is Israel taking on the sins, right? This is Israel redeeming itself. We are the suffering servant. Look, when we got exiled in the 1st and 2nd century, it was like that. We bled out, right? We felt like, Hashem, has basically had forsaken us. You won't find a single rabbi that will tell you that was, JC. No one. In fact, if you go to the Gemara, you do have a description from Rabbi Onkelos, the same rabbi, that talks about JC, describing Isaiah out. And even Daniel 12 and Daniel 14. He's basically, laying these out as we are the suffering servant.
Okay, so
right, Israel is his servant, and we've suffered for it.
So 2 points, right? Obviously, I hope you would agree that you have rabbis mentioning Isaiah 53 about the Messiah, right? Number one.
Right.
Okay, not Israel, right?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. And number two, does it make sense? You would agree with me, right? If a rabbi genuinely believed that Jesus was the Messiah, that they would become Christian, right?
I wouldn't necessarily say so. It is within our tradition from the Mishnah that if a Jew leaves his faith, if a Jew leaves the covenant, right, then he is just basically straight away. But he's always a Jew nonetheless, whatever he follows.
Okay, but let's just say, for example, just for sake of example, Jesus is the Messiah. If a Jewish rabbi believes that Jesus is the Messiah, is he going to become a Christian, a follower of Christ?
Right. Sure, on paper. Sure.
Okay, so how are you going to have any rabbi or Jewish person, or any person for that matter, who says they believe Jesus is the Messiah, but they're not become a Christian? That's like a contradiction.
Right. I'm not sure I follow with you. I mean,
you were saying,
you trying to give like a parable or something?
No, you were saying before that there's no sources of any rabbi throughout the ages who is going to say that Jesus is the Messiah. So this is why I was asking you, if a Jew, a rabbi believes that Jesus is the Messiah, they are going to become Christian, right?
Oh, I get you. Oh, okay. I do understand now. All right. Look, let me clarify.
Okay.
Look, particularly when it comes to Isaiah 53, Daniel 12, 14, and the rest of these so-called prophetic books within the Old Testament, the way we view it, look, specifically when it comes to Isaiah, and this is exclusive within the Mishnah, not Gemara.
Yep.
Right, within the Mishnah is that we don't say that the suffering servant, right, is not a man. We say that he is Israel. We say that the nation of Israel, that the tribe of Israel, the tribe of of Judah is the suffering servant. That's the way we view it. Right now, whether that suffering servant maybe JC or not, that's its own thing. Right. Obviously, the rabbis of that time, don't comment about, JC being, specifically the Mashiach.
Obviously,
but that's something.
Yeah.
I hope that's clarified.
Yeah, it does clear up a little bit, but obviously, I was going to make the same point though. You're not going to have rabbis who don't believe in Jesus saying he's the Messiah. They're going to say, like you said, he's a blasphemer, or he was a false prophet, or he led the people astray, etc. That makes sense, right?
Right.
Okay. All the Jewish people that believed Jesus was the Messiah became Christians.
Sure, I guess.
Okay. So, like I said, it feels like we're going in a circle because, all right, let's read something, right? And you can tell me what you think.
Sure.
So this is Sanhedrin 98b. Okay.
All right. It's Mishnah. All right.
Sanhedrin 98b. And this is a passage about the Messiah. Okay.
Right. Would you read it for me?
Yeah, I'll read it for you. It says, hold on. Do you know Hebrew, by the way?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It says, the Messiah, the Gemara asks, what is his name? The school of Rabbi Sheila says Shiloh is his name, as it is stated, until when Shiloh shall come. It's quoting Genesis 49, Bereshit.
Yeah.
And it basically it goes through a couple of different passages about messianic passages according to the Gemara. And towards the end of this passage, it says, and the rabbis say, one of his names is the leper of the house of Rabbi Yehuda Harnasi is his name, as it is said, indeed, our illnesses he did bear, and our pains he endured. Yet we did esteem him injured, stricken by God, and afflicted, which is a quotation of Isaiah 53 verse 4. So in this passage, they're highlighting that the Gemara is asking this question, what is the name of the rabbi? It goes through different names, and one of the names is the leper of the house. And it's referencing Isaiah 53, which is talking about the Messiah coming and atoning, being crushed, being afflicted by God because of the people. What do you think about that?
Okay, look, that's a very interesting thing. I assume you read that off of Safaria,
Yeah.
right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah,
Safaria,
Safaria, yeah.
right? And you read the Quran Starlights. I do wish that. Look, this is gonna sound like an Islamic argument, right? But we do have scriptures specifically from the Jerusalem Talmud, right, which try to interpret that in a sense that the suffering servant, or Shiloh, the Mashiach Shiloh, the Rebbe Mashiach, right, he wouldn't just be a mere man. He wouldn't just be a man by himself taking on all the sins. As I told you, the reason we came to the conclusion that every single generation we have a new Mashiach is because those same Mashiachs from every generation, they atone for the Jewish people. They atone for Israel, right? That's the way we view it. That's the way the rabbis view it. So what you just named, that was from Sanhedrin 58b.
Not
I
yet.
assume that's from the Gemara, because you
Yeah,
mentioned.
it starts by saying the Gemara is asking, so it's referencing the Gemara. Yeah.
Yeah, so this probably was written around 9th century. All right, interesting. But
You would agree though that
mean,
these things which are written in these times predate that though and go back to previous times, right?
yeah, sure.
Okay, so like it's one passage, which is the rabbis. Like I said to you before, the rabbis are using a passage like Isaiah 53, and like I said to you, I know there's literature in the Jewish sources which talk about a potential Messiah in every generation, but that doesn't contradict the rabbis, like you mentioned, referring to him as the Grand Messiah, right? They still believe in the Messiah, who they most typically call the Son of David, the one who is going to fulfill Isaiah 53 in the ultimate sense. Even if you have an anointed one in every generation, there's the ultimate Messiah, the Grand Messiah, whatever you want to call it, commonly referenced as the Son of David in the Jewish literature, who is going to fulfill a passage like Isaiah 53, right?
Right.
Okay. So go.
All right, let me ask you a question. Let me ask you something regarding that, okay?
Go ahead.
Look, say I go with you and say I believe that JC is indeed, the Mashiach, right? Say, JC is, the suffering servant on the cross who bore our sins, and he actually did, rise back on the third day. All right. They still wouldn't believe that he is God himself, even if Isaiah 53 applies to him, because I told you, every single generation we get a Mashiach who bears our sins, who does atone for us in some way or another, right? So even then, he could have been, the Mashiach of his time, but, nonetheless, he contradicted, what the Mashiach would be to us. Right? Say he did, fulfill that, I mean, he did, suffer on the cross, right? Sure, no problem. I can go by that, right? But did he unite Israel from all four corners of the earth? Number one, did he crush Israel's enemies? Did he fulfill that? That is the most important question that we all ask when we talk to Christians who bring that up. Did he fulfill that? Sure, he suffered on the cross. I will go with you. But as a Jew, did he fulfill the first two things that I told you? Did he reunite Israel from all four corners of the earth? Did he establish us as a nation? Are we being ruled over by the King of Israel? Are we being ruled over by the Mashiach right now? Or what?
Well,
so what do you think?
You're not being, a good question. You're not being ruled over by the King of Israel right now because in large part, the Jews of the day rejected Jesus as the Messiah. So how could he be ruling over them if the majority of them at the time rejected him? That's number one. The second point I'll say is you have to think about it from this perspective, right? The Hebrew Bible, even if you want to go with like the Talmud, right? It says many things about the Messiah. It says much more than him uniting the people or world peace. We're looking at a passage right now, Isaiah 53, which was talking about the unaliving, the killing of the Messiah. So from a Christian perspective, we don't believe the Messiah was going to come and do everything in one go. We believe he's fulfilled some of the stuff in the Hebrew Bible, and on his second return, he's going to fulfill the rest of the stuff. So, yeah, I'll say that. What do you think about that?
Right. All right. So I am very satisfied with your answer, but can you point out in the Tanakh, whether it be Isaiah, Daniel, Jeremiah, wherever, you can find all that stuff, where is the Mashiach going to, potentially have a second coming? Is it really not mentioned anywhere?
It's not necessarily about a passage which says this is a second coming. We have the Hebrew Bible which tells us the Messiah is going to do X, Y, Z. So that's why I mentioned Isaiah 53, for example, is a passage which we've already spoken about today. Christians believe it. You've got rabbinic sources which say this is about the Messiah, the son of David, the Messiah, basically. And there's other passages, though. This is why even in like the Talmud, like the literature, they're debating, how is the Messiah going to come? Is he going to come on the clouds or is he going to come riding a donkey? That's two different passages. That's Daniel 7 and also Zechariah chapter 9. They're debating and they're having conversations. Why? Because they know that the Hebrew Bible says different things about the Messiah. So the Christian interpretation is this is two comings. The rabbinic interpretation is there's the Messiah, son of David, and there's the Messiah, son of Joseph. So however you're going to interpret it, it's based on what is actually in the text. There's multiple things about what it says about the Messiah. It's not only that he's going to bring world peace. You get what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah. Right. So there's no necessarily any mention of any second coming, and the Mashiach is supposed to fulfill X, Y, and Z, right? But the Mashiach comes once, and he's supposed to fulfill X, Y, and Z, as it's been foretold, by all of the Nebuim, by all the prophets.
Okay.
Right? But your Mashiach, your JC, fulfilled X and he left Y and Z. It's not just world peace, as I mentioned. The Mashiach had many other tasks, defeating, the enemies of Israel, gathering, the lost tribes, etc., etc. Right? But he fulfilled some of them in your view. He fulfilled the suffering part and he fulfilled the atonement part. He didn't fulfill anything about, the other, requirements for what a Jewish Mashiach is. And this is why we reject him ultimately. He didn't come for us. And if he did come from a higher authority to us, it's obvious that he really was not for us at all.
What
right?
makes
That's
you think
why we
he
reject
didn't?
him, because he wasn't the Jewish Mashiach.
What makes you think he didn't come for you? Because we've spoken about different passages, mainly Isaiah 53, which Christians and obviously rabbis of antiquity believe is about the Messiah. So you already said he came and he done some things which are not just like specific to Christianity. So why do you keep saying, or why do you say that he didn't come for you if that's literally what he came to do?
Because he needs to fulfill, as you said, X, Y, and Z. In the Gemara, if we go to the Mishnah, right, when we read specifically, when we read in the book of Kibbutz, right, we have the book of Kibbutz.
Okay.
It basically, talks about, the Old Testament, right, not the Torah, the books of the Nebuim, especially when they prophesied about a Mashiach. And they say, and they claim that the Mashiach of the time, the Mashiach of the age, the Mashiach of the generation will gather the lost tribes. He will gather the Sumerians and he would force them to believe, right? He would conquer Rome. He would take over Babylon, right? And our empire would stretch. And each Jew would have 2,800 goy, right? Which means
Yeah, Gentile.
war. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So this is what is the supreme ideal for the grand Rebbe, the grand Mashiach would be, is that he would do all these things. He wouldn't just, suffer. He wouldn't just, suffer merely. He has to do these commandments which were imposed by Hashem upon him. As he's the Mashiach, right? He has to gather us up. He has to make us an empire. He has to rule over us as king, and he has to defeat our enemies.
Okay.
The way he suffers doesn't matter if he suffers on a cross or not. Obviously, he is going to suffer, like Isaiah mentioned, right? But JC suffered. I can tell you he absolutely did, right? I mean, your whole theology is centered about his suffering and not his actual teachings to some extent. But I mean, this is it, right? He
Wouldn't you
fulfilled X, but
consider
he forgot Y and Z.
his suffering is part of his teaching, right? He spends a lot of time in the New Testament speaking about his impending, his coming suffering. But think about it like this, right? As you're speaking, one of the things I'm thinking now is, well, look, you're saying the Messiah is supposed to do X, Y, Z. He's supposed to do different kind of stuff. And you're focusing on, like many Orthodox Jews do, on world peace, ruling over Israel, defeating the enemies, etc. I would, anyway, I'm not going to go down that path for you. The point I'm going to make is, like, how is he going to do all those things, but die for the people? Don't you see, like,
Well, he's not,
the difficulty in
yeah.
reconciling those two sorts of passages?
Right. I told you, it doesn't mean necessarily, suffering does not, equal, to death, right? It doesn't mean, that he is, truly going to get, unalived, as they say here on TikTok, right? We view it in many different ways. He could definitely suffer, right?
Okay.
He could suffer on behalf of Israel, right? That can, be in many other ways, right? It be, spiritually, physically, whatever it may be, the Mashiach would suffer, obviously,
Okay.
right? That is, prophesized.
So,
But
let me give you an example, right? So, when in like passages like Isaiah 53, it talks about the Messiah being brought as like a lamb to a slaughter. Okay. When lambs are going to be slaughtered, they get slaughtered, right?
Sure.
Okay. When it says things like he's cut off or taken out of the land of the living, if you are taken
Right.
or cut off from the land of the living, where are you? If you are taken from the land of the living, where are you? Hello? Right, when it's getting juicy.
Are you here?
Yeah, if he's taken from the land of the living, where?
Testing.
Yeah, can you hear me? Eric, can you hear me? Hello, hello, hello.
I can't hear you, host. I can't hear you. Your voice offline.
Yeah, come back into the app, or can you hear me now? Hello, hello, hello.
I can't hear you.
Oh my days. Eric, I can see your messages.
I can't hear you, host. Your voice gone. All right.
All right, I told him to hang up and call back in. All right. Hopefully it doesn't take too long, but wasn't that an interesting conversation so far? And this is the funny thing about this conversation is, remember what I was saying? No, I won't even go there right now. Hopefully you can hear me again. No, he's not calling through now properly. It's not connecting. This is live, guys. I have to pray over these live streams. That's why you have to share it so more people get to see it. How many Orthodox Jews do you think know some of the stuff we're speaking about? he seems quite knowledgeable to a certain degree, and he also seems reasonable for the most part as well. So when I'm saying certain things based on his own belief system, he knows he has to say, okay, you know what, yeah, that's actually true. And you've seen him make certain arguments, and as I've countered the arguments, he's had to back off, because you can't have it both ways. This is why, just going back to Rabbi Tovia Singer and the conversation with that Christian lady, so far, you can see the difference. When you have a bit more information about this stuff, when they say certain stuff, you can question them on it. He's basically saying he's not connecting. But yeah, he's saying he can't hear me. But the point is, as I was just walking him through it, right? He's saying, well, look, the Messiah, is he really going to die? And this is why I'm asking him these particular questions. When the Hebrew Bible is talking about things like he's led to a lamb, like a lamb to the slaughter. He's cut off out of the land of the living. I was about to ask him about verse 9, right? But hopefully he can connect properly this time. Eric, can you hear me?
Testing.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
You can hear me, yeah?
I don't know what's up with my application. Hold on a moment. I'll drop down and come back. Hold on.
All right. Who do you think doesn't want Eric to get this truth today, guys? That's why you have to hit that like button if you haven't already. All right, so yeah, I was about to ask him, as long as he can call back and his connection's fine, I was going to ask him, well, look, you think about a passage like verse 9, he made his grave with the wicked and with the rich in his death. Okay. Like, you go through the whole passage, it's very clear, like, it's talking about death. So, let me see. He's saying my voice, he can't hear me. All right, Eric, can you hear me?
Right, if you're trying to speak, I can't hear you talk.
You can't hear me.
Way. I went to another live, and the voice was working on the other live. It is not working here.
You can't hear me?
You probably have to restart your live or something.
All right.
Oy vey. Oh, joder.
All right. I basically said to him, look, come over to YT, join that way, and he can obviously call in, basically. But hopefully, let's see if he does. But hopefully, we'll see what happens anyway. But yeah, because the audio is working. You know, let me just do one more. I'll check on my phone. Actually, I don't know if I can't actually do that. All right, let me do this. Hold on a second. Test. Test. It's really weird. All right. Going so well. Test. The voice meter's coming through. Everything's coming through. So if it is not working on that side, but like I said anyway, hopefully he comes through on YT side and we keep the conversation going, because that was a good conversation for the most part. I would really like to continue that conversation. All right. So, yeah, where was I? So, yeah, obviously with him, the last thing we were talking about was about the Messiah dying, right? And we were looking at multiple verses in Isaiah 53, which is just one example from the Hebrew Bible, which is talking about the Messiah dying. We can look at Zechariah chapter 12, and I've brought this out in live streams before as well, where in the Talmud, they're asking where Zechariah chapter 12:10, where God is saying they're going to look on me whom they've pierced. And the rabbis are debating who is being pierced, who are they mourning over? One of the answers are they're mourning over the Messiah, right? So there's multiple passages in the Hebrew Bible which speak about the Messiah being cut off. So we could go through any of these passages. I was walking through Isaiah 53 with him in that particular scenario. We could look at any of those other passages and ask those same questions and see what he's like, what's he going to say? If he's going to do anything like he's done previously in the different things I've said to him in the early on in the conversation, I most likely believe he would obviously just yield it and be like, you know what, yeah, like the point you're making is actually true. All right, Avi Cohen. Oh. Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you now. Is this all good?
Yeah.
The TikTok was not working.
Okay, it's cool. Thank you for coming over anyway.
Right, I forgot where we left off.
Yeah, we were talking about
you were asking me
Isaiah. I was asking you, you were saying about the Messiah dying, and I was asking you about like where it says he's led like a sheep to the slaughter. And I was saying, doesn't that sound like someone that's being unalived, that's dying? Like a lamb is slaughtered, right?
Right, he is.
And where you cut off, I was asking you about Isaiah 53 verse 8, where it says it would be cut off out of the land of the living. I was asking you, if you're not in the land of the living, where are you?
Obviously, he is in Sheol.
Okay.
Is,
And
the afterlife.
And when it says in verse 9, he made his grave with the wicked and with the rich in his death, like line after line after line in Isaiah is highlighting that he's dying. He's been put to death, right?
Right.
So how do you reconcile the Messiah coming as a king, ruling and reigning, defeating his enemies, but also clear passages in the Hebrew Bible, which even the rabbis agree with, saying that the Messiah is going to die? How do you reconcile those two things?
Well, yeah, I will go back by the same good old adage that rabbis, I wouldn't say they are conflicted, but they all have a common opinion about the fact that Isaiah 53 could be interpreted on the generational Messiah, number one, or just on the people of Israel, right? But for your sake, I'm going to say that the Mashiach will indeed die, and he will be stricken, and he will be sent to the land of the the land of the dead, right? Say JC was the Mashiach who did die that way. He was the prophesied Mashiach of Isaiah 53. Did he fulfill of the other commandments? He died. He went out and he didn't fulfill any of them except that one command, except that one prophecy. Sorry.
Well, that's why we came to this passage, because I'm asking you. You're focusing on him coming as a king, the Messiah, him defeating his enemies. How is he going to do all those things but die at the same time? You're basically saying he died, but he didn't do the other stuff. I'm now flipping it and saying, well, you're saying the Messiah does this, but how does he do this without dying?
Well, look, the Mashiach would probably die. The grand, Rabbi Mashiach, he probably would not reign that long. But
But
obviously, he will have to do X, Y before Z happens.
but the Hebrew Bible says. By the way, can you come closer to the microphone? They're saying you're a bit quiet. How is
Right.
yes, the Hebrew Bible says the Messiah is going to die, but the Hebrew Bible also says that he's going to rule from the throne of David, and it's going to be an eternal reign. So again, you making that point doesn't help you. It makes it even worse. How is he going to rule and
Yeah,
reign
I told you
forever
we
from
have
David's
a
throne,
Mashiach
but
for
die at
every
the same time?
generation. Yeah, and we have a Mashiach for every generation until the end of time, right? Rabbi Kibbutzim in the Gemara says that Adam, that in Adam's time there was a Mashiach, right? And from there on forwards, from every single generation, there is a Mashiach, right? Even if the grand Mashiach is there will be a Mashiach after him. There'll be a Mashiach after him too, right? You
If
think
hold on. So if the grand Messiah is going to bring about world peace, he's going to defeat his enemies, is going to he's going to do all of this kind of stuff. Why would there be a Messiah coming after him? For what purpose?
because we're not gonna go anywhere, right? We are just, a never-ending, species. We're not. Look for us. There's no such thing as heaven or hell, right? If there is heaven, it's only for the Jew, but there is really nothing else beyond that.
Whether you believe there's heaven or hell, it doesn't even change the point though. If the Messiah, the grand Messiah, is going to come and rule and reign forever and ever as the king, what is the need of another Messiah to come after him? He's already done everything that needs to be done, right?
Interesting.
Interesting indeed. You see the problem, right?
Well, I mean, we do go back, but the old adage is that this could be interpreted, specifically, whether it could be physical or not, right?
What can be
The way
physical or
we
not?
view it, the way most rabbis view it, the way our grand, rabbi views it, Menachem Mendel Schneerson, he says that it is a spiritual death. It is a spiritual reckoning.
What is a spiritual death? The passages in the Hebrew Bible about Messiah dying.
Yeah, and the suffering servant would be Israel. That's the way he says it. That's the way he views it. That's the way he pointed it out in Chabad. So,
Okay, so what if the Rebbe is wrong?
I mean, how could he be wrong?
Because the Hebrew Bible clearly speaks about someone dying, like a lamb going to a slaughter, being cut off
but
from the land of the
Tanakh is
living.
not the superior authority. We have the Gemara, we have the Mishnah, we have the Talmud, which is the superior authority.
Even if you believe that the Talmud is superior to the Hebrew Bible, we've looked at passages already which talk about the rabbi saying the Messiah is going to be cut off.
The suffering servant would be cut off.
Yeah.
Sure. Right, but this could, as I told you, the way the rabbis interpret it in the Gemara, I can give you like 40 different passages from the Sanhedrin, from Gittin, from Kibbutz, all of them talking about the same thing, is that Israel is a spiritual suffering servant. We, the people, the seed of Abraham, we are the servant of Hashem, and we suffered. That's the way we view it. And if we want to go by the literal physical sense that an actual individual will be the suffering servant, and he would have suffered for all our sins and atoned for us forever and ever. I mean, I tell you, it is really conflicting, because then what then after he died and suffered, right? What then? What comes after that, right?
Exactly. That's a good question. This is the dilemma all throughout the rabbinic sources that you say you believe. But this is why we've got to this point, because you keep saying, okay, the Messiah died according to you, but he didn't do this other stuff. And I've flipped it and said, well, okay, you're saying the Messiah is going to do this, but he didn't do this. This is the whole debate about the rabbis in the rabbinic literature. How's the grand Messiah going to do this and do this? They see the problem. You don't seem to see the problem.
Well, no, I do see the problem, don't get me wrong, but it's just I can't really, reconcile the way that, your theology, I just cannot, reconcile it. I mean, it's just difficult for me to believe that the Mashiach would be, a mere man who came and he taught and he preached, and his ministry lasted for 3 years, and then he just simply died on a cross.
We don't believe. I was going to say this earlier on, but since you mentioned this again, Christians don't believe that the Messiah is just a mere man.
Yeah, I'm aware of this. Yeah, he's
So-
going to be God. He said,
So what's the problem?
within him and-
Because you just said it's hard for you to believe that he's a mere. We don't believe he's just a mere man. So what's the problem really?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, he really, listen, if,
Listen.
look, me trying to debate with you from Jewish scripture that you do not, follow, I mean, obviously it's not going to appeal to you. I mean, you're not going to find it authentic. That's fine, no problem. Right. But, for instance, if I want to, appeal to the Tanakh, to the 5, books of Moses, for instance, right, that, the people of Abraham, the people of Moses will be in an everlasting covenant.
Okay.
Right, and the covenant will be forever and ever. Is that correct?
Okay.
Right, and JC abolishes the covenant. No more, Mosaic law. No more mitzvot. No more, circumcision. No more abiding by Sabbath. Right. What we believe in our core theology, I am going by your 5, books, that exist within your paradigm of theology. Ignore the Talmud, ignore the Gemara, ignore the Zohar, ignore everything else. That covenant for us is an eternal covenant, and no Mashiach, nowhere would you find in those, prophetic books that we just talked about, Isaiah, Daniel, Zechariah, Jeremiah, etc. That covenant is everlasting. So it's either the Mashiach, there's no mention of him being, this, covenantal, reformer, or it's just a contradiction between scriptures.
So Jeremiah, you mentioned the prophets. Jeremiah speaks of a new covenant, right?
Where so?
You're not familiar with Jeremiah speaking of a new covenant?
Not necessarily. I mean, I did hear, what do you call him? I did hear Tovia Singer talk about such a thing.
Okay.
I didn't dig deep into
In
it.
Jeremiah 31, for example, it speaks about a new covenant.
Right. Can
So-
you pull it up, please?
I'll read some of it. Chapter 31, verse 31. And then I want to talk about Isaiah as well. So Jeremiah 31:31 says, "Behold, the days come, says the Lord, that I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah." New covenant, right?
Right.
And he says in verse 32, "Not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day that I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt." So what covenant did he make with them when he brought them out of Egypt?
Right. Let me read the whole thing further, right? So I don't, make any assumptions in here. Right. Not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day that I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, which my covenant they break.
So that's a new covenant, right?
Husband unto them, saith the Lord. Wait, I want to read the whole thing if you don't mind.
Okay, go ahead.
But this shall be the covenant. It's going off the screen.
Oh, sorry.
All right.
Go ahead.
But this shall be the covenant that I'll make with the house of Israel after those days of the Lord. I will put
All right.
I'll put the law. Wait, yeah, you're scrolling. Yeah, I will put the law in their inward parts and write it in their hearts, and will be their God. And they shall be my people, and they shall teach no more every man in his neighborhood and every man in his brother, saying, Know the Lord, for they all shall all know me. So, forgive them, and I could not remember the sin no more. The said Lord, which give the sunlight day and ordinances. The ordinances depart from me, says the Lord, and the seed of Israel should also. Then the seed of Israel also shall cease from being a nation before me forever.
He says, if this
Okay, that
doesn't
is
come,
interesting.
he said, if this doesn't come to pass, like, yeah. So this is a new covenant, right? That Jeremiah is speaking about.
That is very interesting. And in that same passage, it says that Israel would cease to be a nation. And
No, it doesn't say they will cease to be a nation. He says, if he breaks his word, then Israel will cease to be a nation. It's basically his way of saying that I'm going to fulfill what I'm saying. As long as the stars come up in the nighttime, the sun comes up in the day, the moon comes up in the night, you can bank on my word being true. That's the point he's making.
And that's in Jeremiah 30, you said?
Jeremiah 31.
30, Jeremiah 31.
31. And you can like read down. But a new covenant, right?
Okay, I will go with you on that.
And what's even really good about that passage is God is speaking there in contrast to the old covenant, the covenant with Moses when they came out of Egypt, right?
Right.
Okay, which is good. All right. So another one I want to talk about just quickly is actually no, I'll leave it for now. I'll leave that for now. But yeah, so a new law is coming in the future. Who do you think would bring about that law, if not the Grand Messiah?
Right, obviously the Grand Mashiach.
Exactly.
Obviously, nobody else.
It's not going to be just some random person. It's going to be the person who's going to bring about world peace, right? And is going to like complete something like this.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, I do gotta tell you that I'm sort of speechless at the moment. I mean, I'm trying to, reconcile my thought. I do remember Tovia Singer talking about this specific passage, right?
Yeah.
But the way he made it sound was extremely, it was sort of unique, I could say. But this is like a new look. I mean, obviously, this is how you reconcile your theology with the theology of the Old Testament, right?
Yeah, just the point is the law of Moses was never supposed to be for all time, like forever and ever and ever, because of passages like Jeremiah, which talk about a new law coming in the future. That's the point. So
Right. But other people who are in the new covenant, are they the inheritors of Abraham's promise?
yeah, it would be, yeah.
Well, I think I've reached the stumbling block where I don't necessarily know how to respond. I mean, obviously, as a Jew, I follow yeshiva, and I have to go through studies, right? But this did click a little bit in my mind.
All right. Well, look, Eric, it was great having a conversation with you today. Definitely subscribe to the channel. I talk about Orthodox Judaism in regards to Christianity, like every now and again. So if you want to come back in the future, if you've got more questions, anything like that, we can have another conversation. All right?
Yeah, sure. I'll drop you a follow.
All right. God bless you.
Yep, likewise.
All right. That's a good conversation, despite the technical difficulties. But guys, this is why it's good to have these sorts of conversations. It's good to address some of the stuff that rabbis like Rabbi Tovia Singer mentioned, because a lot of the time they will have you believe that things are set way, like, oh, it's like this, when that's not necessarily the case. So often, as I like to show, other Christians do this as well, and they show that, look, well, the things that we believe as Christians, like, are really no different from ancient Jews in the past. There's so much scholarship like revealing this. So it's good to have these sorts of conversations when you can see this in real time. You see, like, goes back to the point I was making earlier on about Rabbi Tovia Singer. I was saying, well, look, Rabbi Tovia Singer is so harsh and takes Christian apologists to task and says, look, we corrupt the Bible, we do this, we do that, we do X, Y, Z. He's very firm with them. And in my mind, I'm more like, look, okay, cool. If you're being firm, someone's going to be firm with you. But that's the kind of reason why Rabbi Tovia Singer will say he won't speak to Christians like me. But you can see, I just had a conversation with an Orthodox Jew, very cordial. These are the conversations, the style of conversation I actually prefer. When we both are reasoning, we're both bringing up points, we're both listening to the points we're making, and we're having a conversation, a dialogue about something which means a lot to both individuals. We don't have to raise our voices and shout over each other. We don't need to insult each other or anything along those lines, right? But this is how the conversation can easily go. This is the best thing. This is the best way for the conversation to go, because people can actually be edified. And it's not any of this like bravado and pride getting in the way where people are just shouting at each other and all that kind of stuff. We don't need to do that. Let's just have a conversation. Let's chop it up and talk about what you say you believe, or I'll say what I say I believe. And this is how we have these conversations. Like, this is what makes these conversations good. My goal isn't to stump anyone or for him to be like left speechless. That's not the point. My ultimate goal is for someone like him, and also for us as Christians, to understand the truth. So for him, he's like, well, look, this covenant with Moses is forever and ever and ever. And it's like, no, like, Jesus didn't come on the scene and do something new, like, what just came out of thin air. Like, the Hebrew Bible speaks about the new law that's going to come. So I was going to mention, the other passage I was going to mention was Isaiah 42, but I just felt not to do it, which, thank the Lord, I just yielded and didn't do that, because it seems like the conversation went the way it's supposed to go. So, yeah, guys, this is why we do this, to help you see that we're not out on some island as Christians with our beliefs. We're not believing some dodgy, some crazy stuff. We believe stuff which is thoroughly biblical and can be defended against anyone trying to go against what the Bible's actually saying. And like, he said loads of different stuff, like, well, look, the Gemara, the Talmud is higher than the Torah and stuff like that. Like, I could have gone down that pathway with him, and like, it's big. Don't get it twisted. It's very big. I've highlighted this before, but I want you to understand that this is how a lot of Orthodox Jews actually believe. They believe that the Talmud is greater than the Hebrew Bible. They may not always say it as conclusively and as clear as he did, but your actions speak louder than your words. So if we're speaking about the Hebrew Bible and we're quick to go to, oh no, but the Talmud says this, our rabbis say this, like, so much of the Bible is clear and like very easy to understand. Most stuff you don't need a rabbi or someone else to teach you what this stuff is. So, hey guys. All right, back to Rabbi Tovia Singer. I was going to say our favorite rabbi, but he definitely is not our favorite rabbi. But what he said previously, he was speaking about world peace, world peace, world peace. And don't be surprised, it shouldn't have surprised you that Eric was doing the same. World peace, world peace, world peace, world peace, right? And my point to him is, well, look, there's clearly passages, and I said this with Tovia Singer when the Christian lady, asked him the question, what does the Hebrew Bible say about the Messiah? It's important you think about it from that perspective, because if you don't think about it, what does the Hebrew Bible in totality say? It's easy for someone like Rabbi Tovia Singer to just only mention certain passages and even say, like he did, well, Christians believe this too. Christians are going to agree. I'm nodding my head when he's saying that, because yes, we do believe passages like Isaiah chapter 11, which talk about the Messiah, the son of David, bringing peace and stopping all war, people putting their weapons away. We do believe that. But that's not the only thing we believe that Messiah is going to do. And that's not the only thing the rabbis of antiquity believe as well. So to just focus on those particular passages, it doesn't help the case. Because as you saw in my conversation with Eric, we can flip it. You see how he's like, well, okay, let's say the Messiah is supposed to come and die. He's supposed to be unalived. But how does that, like, all these other things? Okay, let's just reverse it. Let's say the Messiah is going to do all these things. How is he going to do these things and die at the same time? This is a dilemma that the rabbis have in the ancient Jewish sources. They're questioning how are we going to make sense of these two things? You look through the literature, one of the key lines of like interpretation is what the rabbis had to do was make two messiahs. That was their way of interpreting it. There's the Messiah, the son of David, and the Messiah, the son of Joseph. That was their way of interpreting this conundrum. We don't say as Christians there's two messiahs. We say, well, it doesn't say there's going to be two messiahs. It just says the Messiah is going to do X, Y, and Z. So if the Messiah is going to die, but he's also going to reign as a king forever and ever, Isaiah 53 is such a great passage because it helps us understand all of it on so many different levels. He's going to come, he's going to be like a lamb, he's going to be killed for other people, not for him. He's not the sinner, it's the other people that are sinners. But also talking about he's going to see his seed, his etc., which doesn't have to be talking about literal seed either. It can just be talking about disciples, followers, etc. So Isaiah 53, amongst other passages, helps us understand I was going to say the two natures of Christ, but like no pun intended, but the two streams of the Messiah in clarity, like clearly. All right. So he's talking about the world peace. He was about to start talking about the destruction of the rebuilding of the temple. These are things which, again, Christians can believe and say, yes, well, we believe the temple may be rebuilt, etc. That doesn't change the fact that there's other passages in the Hebrew Bible which speak about this. So we saw this last time we did a live stream with Rabbi Tovia Singer, and I'm sure we're going to see this again, right? Even though I haven't seen what he's going to say here. If someone asked me, what does the Hebrew Bible say about the Messiah? I'm going to list off multiple different things. The Hebrew Bible talks about the Messiah ruling forever and ever from the throne of David. It speaks about the Messiah being a sacrifice for the people. It talks about the Messiah being cut off. It speaks about the Messiah as the Son of God, right? God's Son. It says multiple different things. It speaks about the Messiah coming with the clouds, the Messiah being human, but also being referenced as divine. There's so many different things we can say. Well, this is what the Hebrew Bible tells us about the Messiah. He's going to be born in Bethlehem, right? He's going to be from eternity. It says all of these different things. I'm not going to turn around and just, it says these things and leave out the other things, because that doesn't really help. That's just, if you're going to do that when she's asking him very clearly, what does the Hebrew Bible say about the Messiah? It's problematic because you're leaving so much on the table and you're making it seem like these are the only things which it says about in the Hebrew Bible about the Messiah, which is obviously problematic. All right, let's continue. Let's keep going.
The entire end of the book of Ezekiel, a world where there's war, Isaac and Jacob. So if we live in a world where there's more than one religion, the Messiah has not yet come. If we live in a world where there's war, the Messiah has not yet come. The building of a temple in Jerusalem, the entire end of the book of Ezekiel is devoted to this topic. Ezekiel 37, last three verses, meaning verse 26, 27, 28, tell us about the temple. All the nations will know that I am Lord when the temple is standing on Mount Moriah. And the last 8 chapters of the book of Ezekiel contain the unused blueprints of the final temple. So if there's no temple in Jerusalem, that means the Messiah has not yet come. Elijah the prophet will usher in the coming of the Messiah.
So again, just notice, right? The same way I spoke to Eric earlier on, and he's saying, well, look, he's supposed to bring world peace and he's supposed to do this and he's supposed to do this. And it's like, okay, how is the Messiah going to do all these things but die at the same time? This is the problem. When you just focus on specific passages and leave the other passages, you fall into this sort of dilemma.
Elijah the prophet has not yet come. All the nations will stream to Jerusalem and worship the one God of Israel. That has not yet occurred. That will occur in the Messianic age. And again, I'm being very careful to examine passages in the Jewish scriptures that all Christians and Jews recognize as speaking about the Messianic age.
And notice, right, because his response here is dealing with the point I'm making. Why is he only mentioning these passages? Rabbi Tovia Singer will say, well, these are the passages, these are the clear passages, which is all Christians and all Jews agree. Number one, not all Christians and not all Jews believe these passages are messianic, right? Let's just say the majority. But the same way we spoke about passages like Isaiah 53, many Christians and many Jews believe that is a passage about the Messiah. Many of them. So to leave those sorts of passages out is problematic, very problematic. So he can't, as he's trying to do, explain it away and be like, these like all Christians and all Jews. Yes, like majority of Christians and majority of Jews believe these passages that he's mentioned are messianic. But there's also other passages which also many of the Christians, many of the Jews from antiquity to now believe is messianic. Isaiah 53, for example. So you can't have your cake and eat it too, Rabbi. That's not how this works.
The Messiah's role is not one of a miracle worker. He's not supposed to die and resurrect from the dead, and he's not supposed to die for anybody's sins.
So he's obviously taking an interpretation of passages like Isaiah 53 and saying this is not about the Messiah. This is about the nation of Israel. And the problem, as I've already shown, and we can show it again, his ancient rabbis don't agree with him, right? We looked at this earlier. We can look at this again. This is from the Talmud, right? From the rabbis are asking, they're talking about the name of the Messiah. And one of the things, they go through different passages. At the end of this section, they speak about Isaiah chapter 53, verse 4. And they say, and the rabbis say, the leper of the house of Rabbi Yehuda Harnasi is his name. As it is stated, indeed, our illnesses he did bear, and our pains he endured. Yet we did esteem him injured, stricken by God, and afflicted. Isaiah 53 is such a clear passage. The rabbis are saying, look, this is one of the names of the Messiah. He's taking on our illnesses. He's bearing our pains. He's injured for us, but we think that God is stricken him. God is afflicting him. He's done something wrong, which is the very problem with many of the Jews in the first century who rejected Jesus as the Messiah. If he's on God's side, he would come down. He wouldn't allow this to happen to him. So for the rabbi to say, oh, no, this isn't, like, the Messiah isn't supposed to do that. There's too much in the Jewish literature which agrees with us as Christians that the Messiah is going to atone for the people. He is going to suffer and die. Too much. And this is such a good comment. They don't read Job. And the reason why is because Job is such a powerful illustration of the Messiah. Someone who was in the chief position, came down, not because of any fault of his own, and then went back up. Who does that sound like, guys? There's so much typology in the Hebrew Bible of the coming Messiah. This is why the rabbis say and believe that all of the Hebrew Bible is really just pointing to the Messiah and the Messiah fulfilling all of this stuff. Like, the book of Job in many ways can just seem random. Like, what's this book doing in the Bible? Like, there's many passages in the Hebrew Bible which speak about and prepare us for suffering, potential suffering, even suffering that may not even be because you've done anything necessarily wrong. Many passages in the Hebrew Bible. But we've got this book which for a lot of people doesn't make a lot of sense. It's like, what's going on here? When you think about the Messiah and what he's supposed to do, it makes so much sense. Right? Even when you get to the end of the book, you think about, for example, right, Job. Job is afflicted. He loses everything. His wife basically tells him to just curse God and die. In the end, this is the same person. The same person who was basically telling him to just die and get on with it is the same person he's having all these children with at the end. That's restored. The friends that are coming and saying you've done something wrong, he prays for them. They're restored. Everything in the book of Job, from like men's perspective, like is restored through Job's blessing. The suffering and then the blessing, he restores everything, which is a powerful like illustration and typology, something which prepares us greatly for the Messiah, for Christ. So there's too much in the literature for the rabbi to just so clearly and confidently just be like, just throw it all away and be like, no, the Messiah isn't supposed to do this.
To examine passages in the Jewish scriptures that all Christians and Jews recognize as speaking about the Messianic age, the Messiah's role is not one of a miracle worker. He's not supposed to die and resurrect from the dead, and he's not supposed to die for anybody's sins. Rather, the Messiah is somebody who gives hoichacha, which is a Hebrew word, which means he will rebuke the nations, he will judge among the peoples. And as a result, what we discussed, they'll take their spears and swords and turn them into plowshares and pruning hooks. Wars will come to an end. So if you turn on the news, and we don't know each other, but I would imagine, Stephanie, that one of the first things you do when you wake up is you turn on your computer and you want to see what happened in the last 8 hours, right? You want to know what happened and what's happening in Iran, as an example, I'm sure. Well, if the news says there's a war, that means the Messiah has not yet come. So this is exactly what the Messiah is supposed to do based on the Bible. And it is for these reasons that many people have claimed to be the Messiah. In our tradition, Jesus never claimed to be the Messiah, but that was a claim made for him. But regardless, many people have claimed to be the Messiah. What they all have in common is they have accomplished none of these things that are in the scripture. And that's why what we're waiting for, and that's why Judaism doesn't accept the Christian Messiah.
Okay.
So there was his answer to the first question. What does the Hebrew Bible, she asked, very good question. What does the Hebrew Bible tell us about the Messiah? Rabbi Tovia Singer decided to focus very much on the coming world peace. If there's no world peace, that means there's no Messiah. But Rabbi Tovia Singer has ignored more stuff in the Hebrew Bible which tells us about the Messiah. And you have to think about, why is he doing that? Is it because he doesn't know? Most likely no. I believe it's obvious. If he speaks about other stuff in the Hebrew Bible which are messianic, it's not going to help the argument he wants to present, which I believe is disingenuous. It is disingenuous. And if he's doing that, it's evil. He shouldn't do that. He should. It does. And this is the thing. This is why I appreciate when you look through rabbinic history, different rabbis from history. I've shown some of them. I'll definitely show them again in the future at some point, where you've got rabbis saying, well, look, you have rabbis saying, don't interpret these passages in this way because it helps Christians. And you've got rabbis saying, no, I'm still going to interpret it this way because this is what I believe is the true interpretation. So the reason that's so great is because you can see that not all of the rabbis, but there are many rabbis in history which are trying to distort passages in the Hebrew Bible or distort interpretations, change interpretations because they help Christians. Not because the interpretation isn't sound, but because if we interpret these passages in this way, this is going to help the Christian interpretation. This is why in more recent years, in more recent centuries, this whole the Messiah is Israel has become so popular. It didn't come out of it wasn't invented with Rashi, but it was heavily popularized by Rashi. And Rashi is from 1,000 years ago, guys. So you had hundreds and hundreds of years after Christ where most of the rabbis, many of the rabbis were saying passages like Isaiah 53 are messianic about the Messiah, an individual. As time's gone on, hundreds of years have gone by, Christians are using these arguments and saying, look, this is about Jesus. What's the problem here? The Messiah is going to come, he's going to suffer for the people. We don't get what's so difficult to understand. Then you have rabbis coming along and saying, no, don't do this. You're helping them. Say a different interpretation. Then they go into their tool bag and say, okay, cool, well, this is another interpretation. Let's just make this the popular one now. Let's start proclaiming heavily, this is the interpretation. Now, I've said this before, I'm going to say this again. Christians haven't always helped with this scenario, right? Christians that have mistreated sinfully and wickedly Jews in history have not helped in this scenario. Because when you mistreat a Jewish person in the name of Christ, and say this is God's judgment on you, etc., do you think that Jews in large are going to be like, yeah, I like Christians? Do you think Jews are going to be like, well, yeah, let's say the same interpretations? Like, no, they have valid reasons throughout different parts of history to not like Christians. This is why what we do today is so important, because we have to be able to make the same arguments, reason, and not come from a position where it's like we're mistreating people. Hopefully that makes sense. So, definitely there's always going to be a faithful remnant, and all of the, like, not every Jew today you're going to hear is going to sound like how Eric did earlier on, where he's like, yeah, like the Torah and these things are above. Like, I'm sorry, the Talmud and these things are above the Hebrew Bible and stuff like that. But let's keep going.
And as you know, we as Christians, we know those passages of the Bible, but the Christian theology says that those verses are referred to the second coming of Jesus. How do you respond to this?
Okay. First question was good. This second question is good as well. So, yes, we as Christians, like the rabbi said, and like she's obviously confirmed again, believe that passages of the Messiah bringing world peace, ruling from the throne of David forever and ever and ever, etc., defeating all of the enemies, which are natural enemies, because sin is the ultimate enemy. That was the first enemy, right? Sin, which Jesus solved in the first century on the cross. So it's always funny when people say like, oh, the Messiah is supposed to defeat his enemies. Guys, what was the initial enemy that made the world the way it is? Sin. This is why Paul says in Corinthians, death is the final boss. Because what does death come from? He tells us in Romans, the wages of sin is death. Going back to the very beginning. So we can get fixated on physical, natural enemies, war, physical war. But where does all that war really come from, guys? It comes from the sin nature, from sin. Because sin brings death. It's because we're sinful why we engage in wars that we shouldn't be fighting. It's because we're sinful that we do sinful things. That's why. If you remove sin from the equation, none of this stuff is going to happen. So when the Messiah returns, the Messiah's main role is to, if they say, well, it's to stop world peace, what is like it's to stop war and to bring world peace, what is that really talking about? It's taking you back to the Garden of Eden environment where it was sin-free and man was in right standing with God. So sin is the ultimate enemy, which needs to be destroyed. And Jesus did that on the cross. So anything else which happens on a natural level is just icing on the cake. So the rabbis have it flipped the wrong way. World peace, physical world peace, physical world peace. Like, no, that you could stop all wars today. Is that going to change the people that want to go out and have war? No, that's not. But when your heart is changed, that's the kind of thing which can change your intentions. This is the major difference. So again, she made this, the second question she asked is really good. The Christian says he's the second coming. Let's see what the rabbi is going to say in response to this. And let's see if he's going to give a full answer or if he's going to like bring a short, concise answer which leaves a lot on the table. Let's see.
So what Christians should be demanding is evidence of this, meaning Christians should be asking, where is the passage that says that the Messiah will accomplish this in the second coming? Consider this: if a Messiah could accomplish all these verifiable things in the second coming, then anyone could be the Messiah. That means it becomes unfalsifiable. Every single claimant to be the Messiah, and there are hundreds of people, it's even recorded in the Christian Bible, that others claim to be the Messiah. We are falsifiable. Every Messiah could accomplish all. Where is the passage that says that the Messiah will accomplish this in the second coming? Consider this: if a Messiah could accomplish all these verifiable things in the second coming, then anyone could be the Messiah.
I'm trying to understand how that follows. Not anyone is going to be able to bring about world peace in the way The Hebrew Bible clearly says the Messiah is going to do it. Not anyone is going to be able to rule and reign from the throne of David. There will be imposters, definitely, but are they going to be able to do it in the ultimate sense, which is mentioned in the Hebrew Bible? No.
That means it becomes unfalsifiable. Every single claimant to be the Messiah, and there are hundreds of people, it's even recorded in the Christian Bible, that others claim to be the Messiah. We are told that Jesus says in the Olivet Discourse in Matthew 24 that many will come in my name. So as it turns out, many people can claim to be the Messiah, and all you need is second coming. So then who then could be this? So it's non-biblical, and it's striking. Now, a Christian might respond and say the following. We'll say, well, it's not like Jesus didn't do anything. He was, after all, born in the city of Bethlehem and was born to a virgin, just as an example, right? A Christian might say, so he's done some things and other things he hasn't done yet. Well, as it turns out, there's no prophecy in the Bible. I know Christians believe there is, but there's no prophecy the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem, and there's no prophecy he'd be born to a virgin.
And I mentioned this previously in a previous live stream. Rabbi Tovia Singer doesn't believe Micah chapter 5 is a passage speaking about the Messiah coming from David.
I want to set that aside for a moment. If Jesus wasn't born in Bethlehem, and in fact he was conceived naturally, you wouldn't know it today. You'd have no way of verifying this. These are completely unfalsifiable. However, if Jesus would have brought about a world peace, the ingathering of the exiles, the building of the temple, which the Bible explicitly says he would do, we would know about it today. The first century was a very difficult time.
All right, so before we get story time from Rabbi Tovia Singer about the first century, let's think about what he said so far. So Jesus was born in Bethlehem. He was born of a virgin. These are things which can't be, verified now at this point in time. But that doesn't mean that it's not true. So his point is, if I'm understanding him correctly, that because Christians believe that the Hebrew Bible talks about world peace coming with the Messiah, the Hebrew Bible obviously speaks about other stuff the Messiah is going to do. And how we as Christians rationalize all of these passages, well, he's going to come twice, which makes sense logically. If you have passages which talk about him dying, at the very least, he's going to have to be resurrected. That's obvious. If you have passages in the Hebrew Bible saying the Messiah is going to die, he's going to be cut off from the land of the living, but you also have passages saying he's going to rule and reign forever, bare minimum, he has to be raised from the dead. Bare minimum. Which you could argue, some are going to argue and say, oh, it's the second coming. Some aren't going to argue it's the second coming. Some are going to say, well, he's resurrected, he ascends to heaven, he's going to come back again. Okay, so this is how we deal faithfully with the text as Christians. Now, it's interesting because the rabbi will disagree, but we look at passages. One of the reasons why, and Rabbi kind of mentioned this like a little bit, Christians are going to say Jesus did other stuff, right? He was born in Bethlehem, he was born of a virgin, etc. Okay, like this is why the timing of Jesus is so powerful. And I'm interested to hear what he's going to say about the first century, but it matters that Jesus came in the first century before the temple was destroyed. It also matters that Jesus was saying that the temple is going to be destroyed because they rejected him. Because let's say, for example, right, Jesus, as it says in the Gospels, was predicting that the temple would be destroyed. I guarantee you, if the temple was not destroyed up until this present day, what would they be saying about Jesus? They'll be saying he was a false prophet. He said the temple was going to be destroyed, and it wasn't destroyed. That's what they would be saying. But because in the Gospels it says that he said that, now all of a sudden it's like, no, like this is not really important. It doesn't really matter. Like, no, these are all things which help us understand why the timing is so special. I'm not going to go into passages like Daniel and the Christian interpretation of those passages, the Messiah coming before the temple is destroyed, and Malachi chapter 3. coming to the temple. How does this stuff happen if the temple isn't destroyed? The second temple is supposed to be greater than the first temple. What's greater about the second temple? Nothing. The people, half of the people were weeping when they saw the second temple built, because they're like, this is nowhere near in comparison to the temple that King Solomon built. What makes that second temple great? Malachi 3:1 tells you. He's coming to the temple. So when Jesus is going to the temple, that's what makes that temple, one of the things which makes that temple greater than the first temple. Because God incarnate in the flesh came to the temple, as Malachi 3 says. So these are just a couple of different examples which timing matters. Timing really matters. The temple's destroyed. It hasn't been rebuilt ever since. Like, these are all things which help us as Christians have confidence in the fact that not only was Jesus crucified for the people, not only was he born in Bethlehem, not only is he doing all these, not only did he do miracles, not only all of this stuff, not only did the disciples believe, right, which is critical, right? This is what makes the resurrection so powerful. Why were these individuals who walked with Jesus turn around and start going around preaching that Jesus resurrected if it was a lie, and they knew it was a lie? You think they wanted to go around and be persecuted by their own people, by Gentiles, for something they knew was a lie? No. The resurrection is the best example, the best conclusion of the evidence. So there's so much in our favor as Christians, which Rabbi Tovia Singer wants you to think, no, it isn't. But there's so much. But let's listen to what he's going to say. I'm intrigued to hear what he's going to say about the first century.
It was a time when not only wasn't there a temple, he would do, we would know about it today. The first century was a very difficult time. It was a time when not only wasn't there a temple built, but there was a temple destroyed. The Jews weren't gathered in, they were expelled. There wasn't a worldwide knowledge of God, but rather the...
And why? Why was the temple destroyed in the first century? Was it because they rebelled? The Israelites rebelled many different times, but the temple was only destroyed one time before for specific reasons. What is so special about the first century?
Knowledge of God was diminished in the first century. So if you want to know, and I'll just finish with this point, Stephanie. If you want to know exactly what a Messiah doesn't look like, look at the Christian century. Look at the first 30 years of the first century. That's the opposite of what the Messiah is supposed to accomplish. And therefore, it's not only that there's no compelling reason to believe Jesus is Messiah, it's not only that there's no second coming in the Hebrew Bible, it's the reverse of the Messianic age.
That's fascinating to hear, really.
So the answer to her question, the Christians say there's a second coming, because we look at the Hebrew Bible in totality and we see that there's passages which the rabbis in antiquity agree. There's passages which talk about the Messiah as a king. There's passages talking about the Messiah as a humble servant. How do we reconcile these? One of the things the rabbis say in the Talmud is, if we're good, he's going to come high and mighty. If we don't deserve it, he's going to come lowly. The rabbis see the conundrum. If we as Christians say there's going to be second coming, I mentioned this before, this makes so much sense because of the passages in the Hebrew Bible talking about the Messiah dying. So it's pointing towards two comings. Two instances of the Messiah doing work, which I'm not going to bring up today, but I mentioned it in the past, right? There's Jewish literature talking about how Moses is like a type. We spoke about typology earlier on, right? Moses is a type of the Messiah, which he is. And they say, well, look, Moses had two comings. The Messiah is going to have two comings. So even the whole two coming, like, interpretation for like belief isn't necessarily even like original to Christians. Like it doesn't, like, Jews were thinking and saying similar stuff as well. So It's funny that you say this, Zara Grace. Why do you feel like Rabbi is gaslighting? When I when I saw this video a couple of days ago, I was saying to myself, I was like, isn't it interesting that what I actually thought was, I was like, oh yeah, actually no, let me actually say this. Let me go back. When I first saw it, I was thinking to myself, isn't it interesting? We were speaking about Jesus as the Messiah recently, and all of a sudden, Rabbi Tovia Singer comes out with some new conversation about why Jesus isn't the Messiah. I was thinking, oh, Rabbi Tovia Singer is trolling. But then I started thinking, I was like, no. Clearly, it's probably someone on his team is probably trolling. Like, let's do something like this. But then, as I'm saying this now, I'm reminded, I did a video, I recorded a video recently on my Apologetic Arena channel, the video channel, not the live channel, which will come out at some point in the next couple of weeks. And it's a video I wanted to do for a while, right? And it's Rabbi Tovia Singer talking about how he actually watches YouTube. He's like, in the video, he's talking about, he's arguing against the Trinity. And he actually says like, yeah, I was watching something on YouTube or something along those lines. So you never know, like Rabbi Tovia Singer could be watching our videos. He could be watching other Christians' videos. But if someone on his team is looking at stuff which Christians are like, content Christians are speaking about Rabbi Tovia Singer, and they're like, yeah, like, let's release this or let's do this, that wouldn't surprise me either. And like he said earlier, well, he does interviews every single day. So if that's true and he's doing interviews every day, it wouldn't be that hard for him to just, okay, yeah, let's drop the Messiah. Jesus is the Messiah. Jesus can't be the Messiah. Live stream recently, but yeah, who knows? Is he gaslighting? Maybe. Like the rabbi I say all the time, he knows. I believe he knows enough to not gaslight. I'll just put it like that. So it really just comes down to his intentions. Does he want to gaslight? Does he want to anger Christians? Let's see what the next question is. She's done 2 good questions so far. Let's see what her third question is.
Let's move to another aspect of this topic. Speaking about Jesus, Yeshua, what does the Tanakh says regarding lineage? We know that there are many passages, both in the Tanakh and in the New Testament, that speak about the genealogy of Jesus. How does this question fit with the virgin birth of Jesus?
Okay, so she threw a wrinkle in there with the virgin birth, but I think this is another good question. Really interesting. What does the Hebrew Bible say about family trees, genealogies? What does it say about family trees, especially in regards to Jesus? So, again, very much so like the first question about what does the Hebrew Bible say about the Messiah? This is like an open question where Rabbi could go as deep as he wants or as wide as he wants. He gets to pick. So let's see what he says about family trees. Which will be interesting. It'll be interesting what he says. Let's listen.
It's a problem because the way you know what tribe you're from is through your father. See Numbers chapter 1, verse 18 as an example. Your father determines what tribe you're from. In Hebrew, lemishpachaisam levesavosam. The problem is that the very 2 books in the Christian Bible that contain the supposed genealogy of Jesus claim that Jesus was supernaturally conceived without a father. It's very striking.
See, Hebrew Israelites, I'll just say this now. Even an Orthodox Jew can see that Matthew and Luke are teaching the virgin birth. I'll just leave that there for the Hebrew Israelite who may be watching. But let's continue.
Matthew and Luke. And therefore, what we are actually given in the Christian Bible in Luke 3 and Matthew chapter 1 are not the genealogy of Jesus, but the genealogy of Joseph. And therefore, if Jesus, here's the real truth, so I'm not going to be sarcastic. When the church adopts the notion that Jesus was born of a virgin, so you don't find that in Paul's letters.
And this is a good question. I was going to mention this before we started. We heard what he said, but Houston is saying, don't Jews say that the mother is the one that determines if they're Jewish? And the honest answer is it just depends which Jewish person you're talking to. Okay, so biblically, like what the rabbi is talking about in Numbers 1:18, it does talk about the ancestry coming through the father, like for the most part, right? But obviously, as time went on, there were a strand of Jews who now started determining ancestry through the mother, etc. There's like references in the Talmud to it. And if memory serves me, it's based on just passages in Ezra and Nehemiah. But it really just depends who you're speaking to. So, and if that's obviously the case, then as Christians say, obviously Mary is the one who gives Jesus his biology, his ancestry. So if Mary's from the line of David, Jesus is from the line of David. Very easy. But let me see what else he says before I jump in.
You don't find in the earliest gospel, Mark, I mean chronologically, adopts the notion that Jesus was born of a virgin. So you don't find that in Paul's letters. You don't find that in the earliest gospel, Mark, I mean chronologically.
And why do you need to find it in Paul's letters or Mark? Most scholars today say Mark's gospel is written first. Okay, even if we go with them, why? Just think about this. Why does it need to be said in Mark's gospel that Jesus was born of a virgin? Mark doesn't even give a family tree of Jesus, because Mark is writing about Jesus and depicting him as the servant, the coming servant, the suffering servant. So servants, their lineage, their ancestry wasn't important because they're a servant. Hence why Jesus doesn't mention his lineage, because it's not relevant. Matthew is presenting Jesus as the Messiah, the son of David. Hence why he goes back to David and Abraham. Jews are very interested in family trees. Luke is focusing on Jesus as the Son of Man, his humanity. Hence why his family tree goes back to Adam, humanity. John is focusing on, or coming from the perspective that Jesus is the one from heaven, right? God in the flesh. Hence why his genealogy, if you want to call it that, is the divine genealogy. John 1:1:1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. A lot of people don't really think about that as a genealogy, but it's showcasing, I don't even want to say his ancestry, because that's not, I wouldn't call that ancestry, but it shows his origin. That's the word. It shows his origin. He's from eternity. Like when you look at the 4 Gospels, you can see that clearly. And you can track that sort of lineage. Go through Mark and you see like Jesus is presented over and over again as a servant. He's coming to serve, right? Your family tree is irrelevant. That was like the thinking of the time period. Who cares who's this ancestry servant? Just come and serve. That's like the mindset. So let's keep going.
The moment the church claims that Jesus was born to a virgin, what it did was it sabotaged the claim that he can be the Messiah, because if you're born to a virgin, you don't have a human Jewish father with which to trace your genealogy back to King David. So it blows the whole thing up.
It doesn't blow the whole thing up, unless you need it to blow the whole thing up. Because again, like when you're dealing with the virgin birth, you're dealing with a special case, obviously. We look at these, I bring up these examples all the time when we're dealing with Hebrew Israelites. Adam is a special case. Eve is a special case. In those scenarios, they don't have mother and father. So we don't expect them to be the same as the other people, in the sense of like, you don't have a mom and a father. But then at the same time, they're still human. Right? No one's going to say Adam isn't a human. No one is going to say Eve isn't a human. That's where we get our humanity from. So we already have examples in the Hebrew Bible, on the first page of the Hebrew Bible, in fact, which are showing us that obviously in certain scenarios, things are going to be different, and that's fine. So Jesus being born of a virgin doesn't mean that he's not from the line of David. It means that he gets his lineage through Mary, who is a human descendant of David. And there's something else I was going to say as well. If it comes back, I'll mention it. But yeah. Let's keep going. Random comment as well. Noel says, "Hail Lucifer." Imagine. Guys.
I understand. Thank you for this explanation. Very, very helpful.
Okay, so yeah, so that was the end of what he said in regards to the ancestry. First Chronicles chapter 2 is a good example of this. It's dealing with Israelite lineage, and I mentioned this before, definitely will come up again in the future. There's a guy named Shishan. He doesn't have any sons. He has a daughter. He takes his Egyptian servant, Jarha, and marries the servant to his daughter, and the lineage continues. And the lineage doesn't, like, the emphasis isn't that this lineage now becomes an Egyptian lineage. The emphasis is that this is still an Israelite lineage. So that's just one example of a natural father who's from somewhere else still being classified as an Israelite. That's just one example, which can help you understand that. I was even going to talk about, even if you think about like Numbers 27, with the daughters of Zelophehad, the 5 daughters of Zelophehad. Zelophehad died, he had no sons. So the inheritance passed on to the daughters, which obviously makes sense, right? If you haven't got any sons, then obviously who do you have? Well, you've got daughters. Okay, cool. The inheritance goes to her. So, like, this is the same mindset and theology we can see when it comes to the New Testament and Jesus. She's obviously a descendant of David, and she gives birth to Jesus. Joseph isn't his biological father, and this is how things are passed on to her. So, very simple. Let's see the next question. 3 questions are good. Obviously, she's not pushing back on him. And so, like I said earlier on, this is a video called Is Jesus the Messiah? Christian presses Rabbi Tovia Singer. Does this sound like she's pressing him? No. She's just asking him questions. He's answering. She's not pushing back in any way. So.
Now, let me ask something else. As you know, one of the chapters of the Tanakh that is most dear to Christians
Isaiah
is
53.
Isaiah 53. Over the years, I often heard it said that this chapter is the only one of the book of Isaiah that is not read in synagogues. Is it true?
No.
Okay, and we spoke about this. This was part of the initial snippet, right, when we first started. She's asking him, is it true that Isaiah 53 is not read in the synagogues? Which is what you've heard, like, this is a very popular statement, which a lot of people say, like, respect. And when I'm saying that, respected, like, people who deal with Judaism, they will say stuff like, they don't read it in the synagogue. These are the sorts of passages which are frowned upon reading. And the point is, well, these passages are clearly talking about a messianic figure, the Messiah who's dying for the people. And because of that, we need to avoid it. That's sort of the line of reasoning that you hear when you hear people say this stuff. Rabbi Tovia Singer is saying, no, this is not true. Let's see what we heard him say some of the reason why in the snippet. Let's hear what he's going to say here in full.
Never.
No. So let me explain this, because your audience, I think, will be lost on this completely. 95% of the prophets are not read in the synagogue. So now, God help Christians. I don't know how they possibly navigate their way through this. So Christians actually believe that the Jews read all the prophets in the synagogue, all of Tanakh in the synagogue, but we skip Isaiah 53. That would seem like an indictment, like we're hiding something. And Christians generally believe this, and this would require a mass conspiracy.
And one thing I'll say is, most Christians don't know what Jews read in the synagogues. So, like I said, you hear different people say this, but most Christians don't know what they read in the synagogue. Most Christians aren't necessarily even going to know. I keep saying, the Jews don't read 95% of the prophets.
That means that the Jews are hiding the chapter that we know that Jesus is there.
Okay. Now, one thing I'll say before he continues. Do some Christians believe that Jews are deliberately withholding what the text says in Isaiah 53? Yes, that's what some Christians believe. I mentioned this before. 2 things can be right at the same time. The Jews may not read most of the Hebrew Bible or most of the prophets in their weekly reading. That could be true. It could also be true at the same time that they don't want Isaiah 53 to be read in the synagogues. Now, what I'm going to say is, I mentioned this earlier on, I'm going to say this again now because it's definitely relevant. Is it justified for some Christians to hold the view that rabbis would collude, work together to suppress, cover up, hide, distort passages in the Hebrew Bible which help Christians? Yes, it is justified, at least to a certain degree. Why? Because there are sources in rabbinic history where Jews are saying this sort of stuff, or they're being exposed for doing this sort of stuff. So if we know that in the past there have been Jews which have done this sort of stuff, which have said, let's not interpret this passage this way because it helps the Christians, is it so far-fetched for Christians today to believe, oh, they may be concealing a passage from being read? I don't think that's so far-fetched. I'm not going to say that, yeah, all Christians should just believe it, like hook, line and sinker. No, but is it reasonable? Is there some justification why some Christians would believe this? Of course there is.
But as it turns out, a very tiny number of the prophets, less than 5%, are read in a part of the Sabbath service called the Haftorah. If you wish, I'll explain, but this custom began at the time of the Maccabean revolt, or really Antiochus Epiphanes. The Jews were not allowed to read from the Torah under the Seleucid Empire, and therefore we had to read from a part of the prophets that correlates the portion of that week. So a very tiny number of chapters in the Hebrew Bible are read in the synagogue.
So he's just saying so far, about 200 years, this started from about 200 years before the time of Jesus. The Jews at that point started reading small portions because of the persecution they were under. This is how it is. Let's hear what he says next.
So it's not just Isaiah 53 that's not read, but Nahum, another book of the Bible, the whole book is not even read. But what happens, and I feel so sorry for Christians, my heart goes out to you, is that you're told by missionaries that the Jews leave out Isaiah 53, which I imagine gives Christians a sense of confidence that, wow, the Jews are hiding this because they know Jesus is there. But in truth, it's not accurate.
And what I'll say, like, I'll speak for myself, right? I'm not going to speak for anyone else, but I don't use this argument, right, that the Jews conceal Isaiah 53 in the synagogues. The first reason is because, number one, I don't know enough about that whole setup and that situation. So I'm not trying to speak on a situation which I don't have as much knowledge on. That's number one, which is most important. Number two, notice how Rabbi was just like, well, look, Christians probably feel like a sense of joy. They feel good when they hear this sort of stuff. Like, I feel a sense of joy and feel good when I read Jewish literature, which the rabbi can't explain away, where it says this passage is about the Messiah. That's what should bring you joy. To know that whether like some Jews today are doing that or not, okay, maybe they are, maybe they're not, but to know that the ancient rabbis that came before Rabbi Tovia Singer, who people like him say they believe in like wide majority, many of them believed similar to what we believe as Christians. This is a passage about the Messiah. That's what should make you feel good. Because it shows you, number one, you're not crazy when you read these passages in the Bible and think they're saying what they're saying. You're not crazy. Because aren't we always as Christians attacked and insulted? Like, oh, why are you talking about a book that believes that is not yours? It's the Jewish book. Let the Jews interpret it. When we say, okay, this is what the Jews interpret it as, crickets. But that's not what actually happens. You can go through many of the Jewish, rabbinic Judaism videos I do on the Orthodox Jews on this channel, or on any channel for that matter. How many comments do I get from Orthodox Jews? Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Learn Hebrew. The Jews know what they're talking about. When in the very live streams and videos that are being published, I'm speaking about what the rabbis are saying. But it just shows you they don't actually read. They don't read what you're talking about, the sources you're mentioning, and that's the problem. Such a good comment. Why would they read the prophets when they killed the prophets? Exactly. And that's not even like before someone tried to say, oh, that's just like a Christian spin. Like, no, even the Hebrew Bible that they say they believe in says it over and over again. It shows like clearly the people are rejecting the prophets left, right, and center. Hence why they're always being judged at these different times.
Isaiah 53 is a marvelous chapter that we adore, that we cherish. It doesn't correspond to any portion of the week reading of the Torah, and that's why it's not read in the Haftorah, along with the vast majority of the prophets. Okay. To any portion of the week reading of the Torah, and that's why it's not read in the Haftorah, along with the vast majority of the prophets.
Okay, so Tovia Singer says it's not part of any reading on the weekly list, and that coincides. That's the same for many other passages from the prophets in the Hebrew Bible. My question will just be why? Why is it not part of it? Why are the parts that are mentioned and read from the prophets, the 5% which he mentioned, which are read, why are they mentioned? Why are they read in the prophets and not those other passages? What is the reasoning and the understanding behind it? That's what I would be interested to know. But again, like I said, whether they read it or not, for whatever reason, we already know through source material that rabbis in history have taken different interpretations on passages like Isaiah 53 because it helps Christians, which is to me more damning than whether they read Isaiah 53 today. But either way, like Isaiah 53 is very clear and like visible to read. You can't deny what the passage is saying. Hence why the popular alternative interpretation today is that it's speaking about Israel. They're not going to say, oh, this isn't about suffering and persecution and all that kind of stuff, because it's clear and evident. They have to present a different interpretation, which makes it not about the Messiah, but someone else.
Okay. And so
she's asking good questions. I like the questions she's asking.
Man who, in which the Bible talks in Isaiah 53, who is this man?
Yeah.
Let me go back.
And that's why it's not read in the Haftorah, along with the vast majority of the prophets.
Okay. And so the man who, in which the Bible talks in Isaiah 53, who is this man?
See, Rabbi Tovia Singer rubbed his head there, which is the man, because obviously he doesn't believe it's a man. He doesn't believe it's an individual man. He's going to tell you most likely that this is the nation of Israel. And that's probably why he's feeling a bit uncomfortable when she said the man multiple times. Who is it? Which again is a good question. Who is the man? The only difficulty that can present is Tovia Singer could say, well, you're just assuming your belief. Okay, you're begging the question. So a different way you could ask that question is, who is Isaiah 53 speaking about? And let Rabbi Tovia Singer now answer the question. And let's see what he has to say.
Yeah. So it's not an individual. And again,
surprise.
I'm not going to do this to you. I'm not going to ask you what it says in Isaiah 52 or 51 or 50. I'm not going to do that. If I did that, you would have to open the Bible. And this is a problem for Christians in that.
So just notice, very slippery. This is something Rabbi Tovia Singer is really good at. Right? He mentioned it before about him being sarcastic, and he's really good at saying stuff in a certain way to make it seem like Christians don't know what they're talking about. And this is why it's important for you to know what the rabbis before him teach and say. Because he wants you to believe that because you haven't read Isaiah 51:2, which the Targum says is about, references the Messiah there. Because you haven't read Isaiah 51 or Isaiah 50, somehow this is why you're coming to this erroneous, wrong conclusion about Isaiah 53. The problem with that sort of thinking is you would have to say the same thing about the rabbis that are saying Isaiah 53 is about the Messiah as well. Did they not know about Isaiah 52 or 51 or Isaiah 50 or Isaiah 49 or Isaiah 42 or Isaiah 40? Did they not know about any of these passages? Of course they knew about these passages. That doesn't change anything. Do Christians not know about those passages? Of course we know about those passages. So rabbis being slick to make it out as if, yeah, you don't read the Bible. Christians don't read the Bible. So that's why they come to these conclusions. This is why rabbis are saying one of the names of the Messiah is the leper of the house, because Isaiah 53 is about the Messiah, but they don't know what Isaiah 52 says, or 51 or 50 or anything along those lines. They don't know any of this stuff. This is what he wants you to believe. Even his forefathers, his ancestors, the rabbis that he looks up to, they didn't know any of this stuff. Maimonides, the guy who wrote a letter to the Jews in Yemen talking about Isaiah 53 being about the Messiah, he wants you to believe that Maimonides in that letter forgot about Isaiah 52, Isaiah 51, Isaiah 50. He didn't know any of this stuff. He just went out of his mind. No. They know what the passages say. And that's one of the reasons why they're interpreting these passages about the Messiah in Isaiah 53. Because they've read the book.
What they're doing is they're only learning 53.
Nope.
Isaiah, incidentally, is a book of 95% poetry. So what happens is that Isaiah, the prophet, presupposed that if you're reading the 53rd chapter, you had read the chapters that introduce it. What happens to all these Christians who live in Rome and live in Vienna, live in Milan? What happens? They're never, ever in church taught by their priest or pastor. The chapters introduce it. So if you want to know who this servant is, which is mentioned twice, you would have to go back. So really what's happened here, it's not that the Jews are hiding Isaiah 83. It's that, and please, I ask you, the viewer, please don't be offended, but the church is hiding from you Isaiah 41, verse 8 and 9, which says, Israel is my servant. Isaiah 44, verse 1, Israel is my servant. 43:10, Israel is a servant. 44:21, Israel is a servant. 45:4, Israel is a servant. I know you can't keep up with all this. I hope you'll look it up on your own. 48, verse 20, 49, verse 3. So all along, Isaiah is telling us that Israel is God's servant in the singular. There are 4 servant songs in view here. So Isaiah, the prophet, presupposed that when you get to Isaiah 83, you already know that the servant is Israel. It says it openly. If you wanted to, you can open up any of the examples I've given you. The question really is, who is speaking in Isaiah 53?
So we'll deal with what he said so far, and then we'll go back and hear what he's going to say about who's speaking in Isaiah 53, right? But notice he listed off a slew of passages, Isaiah 40, 44, 49, 45. He mentioned multiple different ones, right? And we as Christians were apparently hiding these passages from Christians, which makes no sense. The rabbis, this is why it's so good to mention rabbinic literature before you even mention anything in the Bible to someone like Rabbi Tovia Singer, to an Orthodox Jew, because they can say whatever they want to say about Christians. They can, to be honest, say whatever they want to say about rabbis that have gone before them. But the problem they have is there's too much in the rabbinic literature which goes with us as Christians. So I mentioned this before, right? I'll just show you again. I'll show it this time. Maimonides, creme de la creme from ancient Jewish history, right? Medieval rabbi. He wrote this letter, famous letter to the Yemenites. And in this passage, he says a lot of stuff. He insults Christians. He's such like, it's funny when I read this sort of literature and some of the stuff they say, right, about Jesus and Christians, but you put up with all of that just for the gold, ultimately, right? So again, just one of these passages speaking about the Messiah, as for the advent of the Messiah, etc., right? It talks about Zechariah chapter 6. It talks about Isaiah 53. I need to scroll down a little bit. It talks about Malachi chapter 3, as we can see here as well. But where is it? Live, guys. Oh, I just had it a second ago. Did I go too far? Basically, in this letter, he's talking about the Messiah. Okay, there it is. I went too far. He mentions Zechariah, and he says, similarly, Isaiah referring to the arrival of the Messiah implies that neither his father nor mother nor his kith nor kin will be known. And he quotes Isaiah 53 verse 2, for he will shoot up right forth as a sapling and as a root out of dry ground. Right? And he's quoting Isaiah 53 verse 2. Right? He's talking about the Messiah. He's not talking about the nation. He's talking about the Messiah. So for us to be in a situation where the rabbi is saying Christians are hiding stuff, is Maimonides not aware of the multiple references in Isaiah to Israel as the servant? I would assume he knows about those passages. But him, like many other rabbis before Rabbi Tovia Singer, will still say a passage like Isaiah 53, for example, is about the Messiah. Now, the last passage he quoted was Isaiah 49, which is a good passage because it gives you some reasoning, one reason why people like Maimonides and other people would turn around and say, like, no, this isn't about Israel. I mentioned earlier on, right? In Orthodox Judaism, they looked at the Hebrew Bible, Genesis to Malachi. They looked at it like the Messiah was going to be the fulfillment of all of this stuff. So there's no issue. I'll give you an example. In Exodus chapter 4, for example, God calls the nation his son. But in Psalm chapter 2, speaking about the Messiah, he calls the Messiah his son, right? This makes sense from a Jewish paradigm because they looked at the Hebrew Bible and they looked at the Messiah as the fulfillment of the Hebrew Bible. So like the people are God's son, the Messiah in the fullest sense is God's son. That's how you can look at Exodus chapter 4, but then you can also look at Psalm chapter 2. This one, this only begotten son, is the one that's going to rule the nations, because this is what this is all about. Okay. So when we think about Isaiah, yes, contextually, Isaiah does mention Israel, the nation, as the servant. And even if he mentions them in the singular, it doesn't matter anyway. Because there are passages like Isaiah 49, which come before Isaiah 53, which show very nicely the distinction. I mentioned this, I believe, on the last Orthodox Jew live stream, right? Or maybe 2 live streams ago. Right? Verse 3. You really think I'm going to have something highlighted which I teach from? If I'm hiding something, you are my servant Israel. But in verse 5, it mentions Jacob. This servant is going to bring Jacob and he's going to bring Israel back together. But not only that, in verse 6 it says, it's a small thing to bring back, for this servant to bring back Jacob and for this servant to restore Israel. He's also going to be a light to the Gentiles. So salvation can be to the end of the earth. So the last passage that Rabbi Tovia Singer quoted is a passage which showcases that there's a servant who's called Israel but there's also a servant who is distinct from Israel, who is going to gather Jacob, gather Israel, and also gather the Gentiles to him. These are some of the reasons why, when we look at messianic passages, we can make this distinction. Where do you think this whole interpretation that some Jews hold to of this is about the righteous remnant, where do you think that comes from? Because they know that there's a distinction between the nation and this individual servant. Who is that? Some Jews will say, no, this is the righteous remnant, the righteous people who are distinct from the nation. Why do they come to that conclusion? Because of passages like this, which highlight clearly a distinction between the servant, the nation, and the servant, the Messiah. Some Jews will say, no, this is about the righteous remnant within the nation. Some say, no, this is the Messiah who is going to die for the people. And again, I'm pretty confident Rabbi Tovia Singer knows this. But as he likes to do, he likes to mention some stuff, and not the other stuff. So we're not hiding any of these passages. These passages actually help us. That's what's actually funny about this. So he was going to talk about, anyway, let me just go back a couple seconds so we can see what he's going to say.
It says it
Oh yeah, who is speaking in Isaiah is what he's going to say. 50.
openly. If you wanted to, you can open up any of the examples I've given you. The question really is, who is speaking in Isaiah 53? Like, it's a soliloquy, meaning a lot of people are speaking. Who are the ones speaking? I'm not going to put you on the spot because I'm the guest and I'm the one that's supposed to be put on the spot. So I'm going to honor that. So one who are speaking here are the Gentile kings of nations, and they're shocked. Who would have believed our report? And look to whom the arm of the Lord has been revealed. They're absolutely stunned. So shall he cast down many nations. Kings will shut their mouths because of him. Because what had not been told to them, they'll see. What they had not understood, they'll finally witness. And they'll ask the question, who would have believed our report? So now Isaiah 53 we can understand. This is a messianic chapter, meaning in the messianic age, the nations of the world will wonder in bewilderment about the Jews, which is God's servant Israel. How do you know this? You have to read Isaiah 53 in context. Incidentally, Isaiah 52 and 54 is all about Israel in the singular. 54 is about Israel as God's wife who has no children, who suffer terribly. That's the whole context of it. And the nations of the world wonder if, in fact, the Jews were right all along. Why do they suffer so much? Until the point of the Messianic age, the non-Jews can believe, I'm talking about good non-Jews who have a very great love for Jewish people, but still it is widely believed that the Jews suffer so much because they didn't believe in Jesus or didn't believe in whoever. But when the Messiah comes, the non-Jews will discover that surely he's borne our iniquities, meaning that the Jewish people suffered as a result of our transgressions. And here's the big one. The suffering of the Jews caused the non-Jews to repent, to turn back. There are many people watching this now because they studied the Holocaust, study what occurred to us in history, study what occurred to us. You live in Italy, correct? What occurred in Italy on October 16th, 1943? I'll tell you what happened. The Germans came to Rome, and they took away, in front of Pius XII, they took away 1,259 Jews and sent them to their death in front of the eyes of Pius XII. What a tragedy that was. And they weren't supposed to do that because those were the Pope's Jews in the ghetto. The nations will when people study this and understand what occurred to the people of Israel, many people come to love Israel and bless the God of Israel. So Isaiah 53, again, if people do not read this book in context, but read one chapter, you're not going to know what's going on because it is poetry.
So again, I said this before, I'll say this again. So every Orthodox Jew, every rabbi who in the Talmud, in the Jewish literature, is saying Isaiah 53 is about the Messiah, is not reading the context of the book of Isaiah, does not understand the context of Isaiah. Because this is about the nations looking at Israel and wondering like, wow, all your suffering was really to help me. Like, you went through all of this stuff to be a blessing to me. That's the interpretation that Rabbi Singer is putting on this. It's the nation, the people of Israel, who the Gentiles are looking at and are saying, well, man, you've really suffered. We didn't realize that all the suffering that you've gone through as a people was to help us, was for you to atone for us. Like all the rabbis, like I said, who have gone before Tovia Singer, who don't take this interpretation, who interpret like Christians that this is a messianic passage about the Messiah coming to be the leper of the house. None of this stuff is about the Messiah. So like, we're all confused.
Granted, but it's the announcement and confession of the Gentile nations in the eyes of all the world at the end of days, where the nations conclude two things. Number one, Jewish suffering caused us to repent. And number two, the suffering of the Jews occurred as a result of our own iniquities. That's what the chapter is essentially about. The last three verses, being 9, 10, 11, and 12, occurred as a result of our own iniquities. Number one, Jewish suffering caused us to repent. And number two, the suffering of the Jews occurred as a result of our own iniquities. That's what the chapter is essentially about. The last three verses, being 9, 10.
So it sounded like he just said the two things are the Gentiles realizing that the Jews are suffering, that helps them, the Gentiles. And number two, that the Israelites are suffering because of their own sin. If that's true, obviously Isaiah in 53 says this individual, these ones are suffering. He's suffering not because for himself, but not because he did anything, but because other people did something.
And 11 and 12, last four verses, God resumes speaking, and he makes a deal with the servant that if the servant will repent, so then God will give him long life, children, and the desires of God will prosper in his hand. So it's clearly not talking about Jesus.
Where does it say if he repents?
So that's essentially the whole chapter. It's really quite brilliant.
Okay, great point. Thank you. I would like to ask you now regarding the aspect of sacrifice for the remission of sins. For us as Christians, Jesus is the Lamb who on the cross paid for us, taking the place of the animals that the people of Israel used to sacrifice to God. For us, one of the most important verses about this is Hebrews 9:22, where we read that without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness of sins. How can you tell me about this matter?
Right. So that should raise an alarm if the verse that a Christian can point to is Hebrews 9:22. It says, without the shedding of blood, there's no atonement. Now, just the context of Hebrews 9:22, Hebrews is saying that everything that went on in the Old Testament is a foreshadowing of Jesus, of Christ. But this verse doesn't exist. And in fact, take the book of Jonah as an example, a book I know that you're very familiar with. It's a story about a nation that was wicked, a city, Nineveh, the capital of the Assyrian Empire. Jonah came to them, and they repented, and God forgave them. No blood, no sacrifice. So as it turns out, sacrifice atoned for unintentional sins, and Hebrews is misquoting Leviticus 17, verse 11. The vast majority of sins are atoned not by sacrifice, but by repenting, by giving charity. There was a sacrificial system. We miss it. It will return. And that's for unintentional sins. You'll never learn this in church, but you will find it in Leviticus chapter 4. So Therefore, Hebrews 9:22 is not quoted in the Hebrew Bible, although your footnotes will tell you it's Leviticus 17:11. But Leviticus 17:11 is explained to you why you're not allowed to eat blood. It's because blood is reserved for making an atonement for your soul. But Hebrews doesn't quote it that way. Number two, human sacrifices are always forbidden. Molech offering a child to a fire, what the Aztecs did and the Mayans did. Look, we don't know each other, right? And I don't know what your political views are. We've never met before. I don't know much about the Italian criminal justice system, but I do know this. I believe that Italians hope that every person sitting in an Italian prison is guilty. And if you were to believe that there was a single person who was innocent in an Italian prison, it would break your heart.
Of course.
So, of course. This is, we all have that. We want the wicked punished and we want the innocent exonerated. I am sure you live in a civilized country. So if you have that sense of justice, doesn't God have the sense of justice not to punish an innocent person for the bad behavior of the guilty? Moreover, the Bible says that the innocent can suffer for the sins of the wicked. Ezekiel chapter 18, verse 21 through 23. I mean, if you would never want to think that a guilty person could be punished, an innocent person could be punished for the sins of the guilty, well, God at least has as much mercy as you do. So this whole notion is completely antithetical to, is incompatible with the criminal justice system in the Hebrew Bible. Innocent people should be exonerated, and no innocent person can die for the sins of the wicked.
All right, so he said a lot there, right? One thing I'll say first and foremost, like, it's so funny when Orthodox Jews speaking against Christianity play down the sacrificial system to attack Christianity, but then in the same breath highlight the central theme and the significance of the sacrificial system, so much so that you heard Rabbi Tovia Singer say it's good and it's going to come back at some point in the future. If this is so like insignificant, or if it's as insignificant as the rabbi would have you to believe it is, why are they so desperate to get their temple back? Always like makes me wonder. The second thing I want to say is, when you think about atonement, right? Think about it like this, right? He mentioned Hebrews, he mentioned Leviticus. When you think back to the first covenant, right? This is what's really significant, because this is what Hebrews mentions. The first covenant on Mount Sinai with Moses, when he led the people out of Egypt, the covenant was established in blood, right? Moses, the Bible says in Exodus, he sprinkled the blood, he had the tablets of stone and he sprinkled the blood upon the people, right? It was a sign of the people coming into agreement under the covenant. This is the point in Hebrews, that the blood is what brings about the new covenant, just as the old covenant on Mount Sinai was established. It was established with blood. The same way the New Testament is going to be established with blood. Whose blood? Well, the blood of the Messiah. This is the point that Hebrews is making. So that's another point. Another thing to think about as well is, I mentioned this before, I mentioned this again today, like everything we see today which is wrong with the world goes back to the Garden of Eden, what happened with Adam and Eve. And the reason why this is so significant is because we see how God handles that situation, which is a powerful typology and representation of what's going to happen in the future. Because the people, Adam and Eve, sinned, they cover themselves with coats, like leaves, right? They dress themselves up, which is a sign of works. They're trying to cover their nakedness with their own works. And what does God do? The Bible says he clothed them with coats of skins, which is an allusion to a sacrifice. right? How did God cover their sin? With a sacrifice, okay? And this is significant because this is how God handled the first people's sin in all of existence, right? Which is a type preparing us for how he's going to handle it in the ultimate sense, right? With a sacrifice. So all of this stuff is clear. Look at Genesis 22 with Abraham and Isaac. What is the whole point of that? The father going up the mountain and offering the son. What is that all in representation of? The son who's going to come, who came 2,000 years ago, and be offered by the father. For what purpose? Exactly. This is flooded all the way throughout the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, which there's literature which talks about Isaac being offered as an atonement. We don't even have to, we've been in Isaiah 53 the whole point, for so long in today's live stream. A passage which is all about atonement. One person being sacrificed, being crushed for other people. But the rabbi wants you to believe, oh, no, this can't happen. This is not true. The same way the Hebrew Bible, the covenant, the law of Moses was initiated with blood. It's the same way the new covenant will be initiated with blood. That's the whole point of Hebrews. Now, it's always funny anyway when people like Rabbi Tovia Singer mention certain passages in the Bible. Because it's it's so easy for you to just quote their own sources, mention different things in the Bible, which obviously align with us, and showcase we're not making stuff up. It's clear and obvious. The last example I give is, even when you think about the Exodus, right? You think about the final plague. How were the people saved? God told them to what? Sacrifice an animal and put the blood on the door. And the houses which had the blood on the door were the ones where they were protected. The houses which didn't have the blood were the ones which were not protected. What does that symbolize? The sacrifice, the blood, which protects the people. This is all the way throughout the Hebrew Bible. And you have to close your eyes and close your ears to miss it. And this is what Rabbi Tovia Singer doesn't want you to know. So, I've been going for 3 hours, so I'll wrap this up here, guys, for today. We are halfway through, 27 minutes in. So whenever we do this next, a spotless lamb, amen. And whenever we do this next, we'll probably pick up with this. But today's live stream was a blessing. I said at the start, right? These live streams always go in a unique way, whatever the topic is, whether we're dealing with Orthodox Judaism, Islam, atheism, or Hebrew Israelites. And today was no different, right? The call we had with Eric was a really good conversation. I even look forward to talking to him again at some point in the future, because it's just an example of how most Orthodox Jews are not familiar with their ancient traditions. And even more so, many of them are not familiar with what the Hebrew Bible actually says. This is why we can have these sorts of conversations, talk about the Hebrew Bible, and show them things which they haven't seen before, because these are things which they're not spending a lot of time reading. The very thing, it's so crazy when you read through the Psalms, especially a psalm like Psalm 119. You read through that psalm, how magnified the word of God is in Psalm 119. And many Orthodox Jews today don't even spend time reading the Bible. This is the thing which David and many of these people before us read daily. They meditated on it daily. And many of the Orthodox Jews who will claim ancestry to David and to Israelites from the past don't even read the Bible. They don't meditate on it the way they should. So, guys, I thank you all, for those of you who joined me live and participated in the comments. Thank you for the moderators, Ecosmio, Sarah Grace. Thank you for those who came in with their own critiques. Thank you for the caller. It was a good call on so many different levels. And I'll see you next time by the grace of God. Again, Mondays and Wednesdays, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UK. Same place, same time, Same thing every single time, defending Christianity against these different sorts of arguments. And today's another reason why we are in the truth, because we can have these conversations with Orthodox Jews. We can listen to the most popular Orthodox Jews today make their arguments and see clearly why they don't destroy what we believe as Christians. In fact, for many times with the Orthodox Jews, it shows that we as Christians used to believe similar stuff, if not the same stuff. So, guys, God bless, and I will see you sometime soon. Take care, guys.
We take thoughts captive, we pull lies down. Apologetic arena, lions wear the crown. Bold as lions stand and fight, truth shines bright in the night. Arguments fall when the word comes through. Arena live, we coming for you.
Not carnal weapons, strong in Christ. Truth cuts deep, yeah, truth precise. Every high thing coming down. Watch those arguments hit the ground. First century at lions roar. Christians bled on the arena floor. Now roles reversed, hear that sound. We the lions all around. What's the context? Say it loud. Truth stands tall, we ain't bowed. When the word speaks, error fades. Light shining in every debate.
We take thoughts captive.
We pull lies down. Apologetic arena, lions wear the crown. Bold as lions stand and fight. Truth shines bright in the night. Arguments fall when the word comes through. Arena live, we coming for you. Ecosmios runs the show. Zara Grace keeps order though. Moderators hold the line, keeping everything aligned. Hebrew Israelites, atheists too. Rabbis talking old school views, fibbing for Rook in every claim. Step in the arena, leave maimed. Don't look down, you bleeding on the floor. Game over, hear that lion roar. Hey, hey, don't look down, you bleeding on the floor. Hey, hey, game over, hear that lion roar.
Beat you lightly with a Miss Wax stick. Every argument falls real quick. Spiritually neuralized, can't see clear. Truth right there, but they disappear. That might be clip of the month. We say another